Chapter 490. In the image of the spiritual eye, the spiritual fish's spiritual combination was constantly changing under Emo Lanlin's knife skills. Many scattered spiritual light spots began to gradually converge and rearrange themselves according to a fixed combination. The higher the quality of the ingredient, the more spiritual power it contained and the harder it was to control. At the same time, the intensity of the flame required was also higher. Suddenly, the spiritual light spots inside the spiritual fish began to leak, and the fragrance of spiritual energy rushed toward Emo Xiaoxin. Next, Emo Lanlan began the subsequent production of the ingredient. Holy sh*T, Mom, that's awesome! Emo Xiaoxin was stunned. What he didn't expect was that his mother was even more awesome. She watched the entire story and skipped the most important parts of the operation. The remaining spiritual light spots of the spiritual fish were thus fully utilized by Emo Lanlan to enhance the deliciousness of the ingredient. At this moment, Emo Xiaoxin's sorrow was indescribable. Details of gluttony, the spiritual food of the water lizard fish after being cooked and processed by a demon chef. Mom, we're running out of time. What have you learned in the past 4 days? Emo Xiaoxin looked at his mother, who was holding a book, and asked in exasperation. However, Emo Lanlan calmly waved her hand in response to Emo Xiaoxin's compliment. Suddenly, the spiritual fish on the chopping board underwent a huge change in Emo Lanlan's vision. The combination of countless white light spots was clearly visible to her eyes. As a result, the price of various spiritual ingredients increased to a certain extent. This was because the core of a demon chef was the spiritual alignment, and the alignment was done with the demon chef's knife. This was an operation at a subtle level. If his mother could master it so skillfully, it meant that she had a good chance of advancing to the top 10,000. Looking at his proud mother, Emo Xiaoxin felt that his mother had probably only learned this much after learning for the past 4 days. Ever since the auction house function was launched, Lu Wu actually took a cut of the trade between the players. Every time this happened, he would always receive a large amount of transaction fees. Emo Xiaoxin was not as bold as Emo Lanlan in his first attempt. After activating his spiritual eye, he carefully raised his knife and cut the spiritual fish. Mom, aren't you asking for it? It's strenuous and unrewarding. Emo Xiaoxin felt a headache coming on. He gave up on arguing with his mother and said, since he didn't memorize it, Emo Lanlan could only watch and learn. I made a mistake. Emo Xiaoxin was clearly flustered and exasperated. Under the spirit eye mode, the spiritual energy composition within the spiritual fish that was being roasted by the flames began to distort bit by bit. After spending around 20 minutes, Mo Lanlan started to work. She grabbed the knife on the chopping board and activated her spiritual eye. In the Demon Chef books, there were many spirit energy combinations created by the predecessors of demon chefs. This was also the happiest moment for Lu Wu. After that, the two of them passed through the teleportation circle in the mansion of the Underworld's Central Plaza and arrived at the Liuli coast. What do you know, you little brat? High-end delicacies often only require the simplest cooking methods. As long as the knife skills are good and the spiritual energy in the ingredients is locked, it won't be a problem. Emo Lanlan glared at him in dissatisfaction. However, what Emo Lanlan did next left Emo Xiaoxin dumbfounded. Indeed, he was picked up. He does not even know how to use a saber. It looks like the Emo family's saber techniques will end here, Emo Lanlan said with a smile. Bastard! Emo Xiaoxin said angrily. Seeing the scene, Emo Xiaoxin could not help but sigh. Gradually, Emo Lanlan completed the arrangement of the spiritual energy lock. Most of the spiritual energy in the spiritual fish's body was locked, and the remaining spiritual energy was dispersed in the spiritual fish's body. So you know how to waste time. Emo Xiaoxin could not help but stare. It was like the meat of Tao Wu. The spiritual energy contained in it was extremely large. Even a small piece of meat could be copied with hundreds of spiritual energy composition methods. Moreover, the strength of Tao Wu's meat was too high. Obviously, it could not be copied with ordinary flames. Of course, your biological mother is the successor of the Mo family's saber techniques. Mo Lanlan grinned proudly. Fortunately, the coastline of Liuli was extremely long, so Mo Xiaoxin did not have to worry about not being able to find a place. Mo Lanlan slammed the chopping board, and the spiritual fish suddenly jumped up. Under her sharp knife technique, the spiritual fish kept spinning in the air, showing no signs of falling. The effect of this step was also very crucial for a demon chef. As for the few players in the Mansion of the Dead who were still immersed in their studies, they basically didn't even understand the theory, let alone the actual practice. Ordinary barbecue grill, chopping board, ingredient table, demon chef knife. After looking through the books again, Mo Lanlan made her move. She waved the demon chef knife in her hand again, and waves of cold light shot out. Even so, Mo Lanlan could not help but smile. Then she picked up the spiritual fish and stuffed it into her mouth. She tore off a piece of meat and ate it happily. Eat your mother's useless performance. Do it yourself. Moreover, the scene just now made Mo Xiaoxin have confidence in his biological mother again. Don't panic. Have confidence in your old mother. Mo Lanlan laughed loudly. That's fine. Actually, your old mother likes to practice. Things like theory don't suit me at all. Mo Lanlan heard this and quickly nodded. This was the biggest difference between a demon chef and an ordinary chef. Gluttonous effect rating. First grade, demon chef level evaluation is divided into 10 levels. Each level is divided into upper, middle, and lower. After all the items were prepared, Mo Lanlan took out the Demon Chef Beginner's Handbook from her space. After looking at the table of contents, she flipped to the page about spiritual energy lock on ingredients. However, Mo Xiaoxin was also very speechless about such a biological mother. Gluttonous water lizard fish, mother asterisk cur, so difficult. He was in a good mood. After walking with his biological mother for a while, the two of them arrived at a beach north of Liuli Coast. Gluttonous effect. After use, provide 3,721 experience points. Recover 3 health points per second. Last for 1 hour. Provide 80 satiety points and gain the ability to breathe underwater for 5 minutes. Hearing this, Mo Xiaoxin could not help but roll his eyes and give up on arguing with his biological mother. Among them, the demonic chef knife was the sole tool of the demon chef profession. Without theory, how can there be practice? Mo Xiaoxin immediately glared. And this group of players also included Mo Xiaoxin's biological mother, Mo Lanlan. Biological mother, you're awesome. Previously, he had no idea that his biological mother's knife skills were so awesome. However, when he thought of Ao Jian, who wielded the sword like a god, he suddenly understood why these two weirdos could get married and be together. At this moment, there are a total of 3 tools in front of Mo Xiaoxin: the demonic chef knife, demonic chef pot, and demonic chef spatula. This was a kind of subtle operation. Players had to use the spirit eye recorded in the introductory Demon Chef book to observe the essence of the ingredients, and then use knife skills to rearrange the spiritual energy combination. Let's go out of the city and find a place first. The Mansion of the Dead has not opened the Demon Chef building yet, so we can't cook inside. When the time comes, we can directly start practicing outside. Now, we can only read books and learn as we cook. Try to memorize as many spiritual energy combinations as possible. After all, we can't bring books with us during the trial. At this moment, there were many players at Liuli Coast. They were all practicing gluttonous cuisine with their spatulas. When Mo Xiaoxin saw this, he immediately started analyzing. Because of this, the ingredients in the shop were ruthlessly swept away by the players. After all, the most important thing for these life professions was the ability to practice, and theory only served the purpose of practice. This is the easiest, Just put it on the fire and grill it, hee hee. Mo Lan Lan said, and could not help but laugh. Aren't I experiencing the mentality of the demon chefs when they're creating? It's also like I'm experiencing the path they once walked. Who knows? I might be able to understand the big principles from it. Mom, I want it too. For demon chefs, seasoning did not require seasoning at all, because they could use spiritual energy to arrange and combine various flavors. But isn't this spiritual energy blockades arrangement not complete yet? Why did you stop? Mo Xiaoxin could not help but ask. However, whenever a part began to distort, Mo Lan Lan would decisively flip it over and gradually stabilize it. As expected, his mother was extremely talented in this area. His persistence was normal. At this moment, Mo Xiaoxin finally understood why his mother could calm down and study. She was so damn ignorant and incompetent. You don't want to learn the most important spiritual energy sequencing? You're just reading the story background of the demon chefs? Mo Xiaoxin said in disbelief. After a moment, she raised her head solemnly and looked at Mo Xiaoxin. The story is better, so I couldn't help but jump to read. This operation was invincible. When Mo Lan Lan saw this, the demon chef's knife in her hand immediately slashed at the spiritual fish. At this time, Mo Lan Lan flipped through the book again and began to search for the next spiritual energy sequencing method. She was prepared to use the remaining spirit energy in the spiritual fish that had not been integrated into the spiritual energy blockade sequencing. Why didn't I learn it? I've memorized the story background of the demon chefs described in the book. Mo Lan Lan said unhappily. However, this time, Mo Lan Lan only had the lowest grade spiritual fish, so ordinary flames could also be used. Let's go straight to the Lioli coast and make magical cuisine there. Mom, you're practicing with spiritual fish, not ordinary sea fish. Cooking spiritual fish by barbecuing will easily cause a large amount of spiritual energy in the spiritual fish. When the time comes for the trial, you'll definitely lose points in this round, so you have to change your method. Mo Xiaoxin hurriedly shook his head and refused. The snow-white spiritual fish, meat peeked out through the cracks on the golden skin. The magical grilled spiritual fish, which was mixed with 3 strange aromas, was officially completed. When Mo Lan Lan heard this, she nodded unconcernedly. In other words, no matter whether the cooking method was steaming, deep frying, or boiling before it was done, it had to be cut by the demon chef's knife. Different ingredients also required completely different flames to inscribe the spiritual energy sequencing. At this moment, Mo Xiaoxin was full of admiration. He felt that his biological mother was indeed his biological mother. There was indeed a reason why she could give birth to such an outstanding person like him. At this time, there were not as many players in the Mansion of the Dead as there were a few days ago. The use of other tools depended entirely on the demon chef. But the knife was different. The specially made demon chef's knife was a key tool to change the spiritual energy sequencing within the spiritual ingredients. For example, the spiritual fish in Mo Lan Lan's hand actually emitted 3 strange aromas after Mo Lan Lan cut it up. Whether these spiritual energy sequencing would collapse during the grilling depended entirely on whether the cooking process was done properly. Let's begin. I still have 3 spiritual fish here. I'll give them to you to practice with later. Choose a cooking method first. Knowing that he could not change his biological mother's mind, Mo Xiaoxin could only compromise. He then took out a spiritual fish from his space and threw it at his mother. Mo Xiaoxin was speechless. Although he skipped through the demon chef's beginner's handbook, the content he skipped was unimportant. The main point of the test was to learn how to operate a demon chef and memorize the combination of spirit power. That was the key to passing the test. As expected, his biological mother's personality was still as swift and decisive as ever. She actually cut it directly. Couldn't she cut it bit by bit on her first try? Be gentler. Most players chose to go out of the city to look for ingredients or find a place to practice the cooking methods in the Demon Chef's Beginner's Handbook. Then, Emo Xiaoxin took out a few basic tools from his base and looked at his biological mother. As expected, she had extremely strong practical skills and extremely weak theoretical skills. Although this slash was very careful, the moment the custom-made demonic chef's knife touched the ball of spirit energy, Emo Xiaoxin didn't have time to do anything before a crack appeared on it. She started the fire and placed the spiritual fish, which had been sealed with spiritual energy, on the grill. Then she took out a chair from her space and sat down casually. She began to work. It turned out that these 4 days were all wasted. Fortunately, this spiritual fish was not a particularly high-end ingredient. Moreover, the spiritual energy sequencing was not too much, so it was very easy to control. After about half an hour, the spiritual fish was finally finished. This was because, during cooking, the spiritual energy sequencing in the ingredients would change. However, as long as it was successful, the spiritual energy sequencing could be engraved inside the ingredients and preserved for a long time. Creator Emo Lanlan. At this point, they had no other choice but to seize the time to study it. The method she chose was very simple. Grill it with charcoal. After a while of cutting, Emo Lanlan suddenly stopped. Look at you. Where have you been these 4 days of studying? I told you that studying is useless. Why don't you listen to your old mother's teachings? Practice is the truth. But the spiritual fish you're using is provided by me. Emo Xiaoxin was not satisfied. The 5 days of study were coming to an end. On this day, most players began to practice. Emo Xiaoxin's eyes widened. What do you think of grilling? Since it was his first time doing it, Emo Xiaoxin felt that his mother could do it so perfectly. Hearing her son ask her what method she wanted to use to make magical cuisine, Emo Lanlan's face showed a thoughtful expression. You haven't studied enough. The creator of the demonic chef profession, Di Dalong, didn't read any theory books. He only discovered the spiritual energy sequencing in the ingredients when he was making them, then experimented and figured it out. My son that I picked up, I'm learning now. Stop arguing. There's not much time left. Don't waste my time, Emo Lanlan said unhappily. Your old mother has a bad memory. Didn't she forget the sequencing? Hold on. As she spoke, Emo Lanlan looked down at the introductory Demonic Chef Handbook on the table. Just from the transaction fees of the auction house, he could earn a lot of money. Being filial to one's parents is a virtue, Emo Lanlan said righteously. She could not remember the simplest spiritual energy sequencing, but she could perform the most difficult part perfectly. What kind of divine operation was this? Good son, what do you think we should do now? We're running out of time. Looking at Emo Xiaoxin, who was gritting his teeth, Emo Lanlan could not help but sigh. Delicacy rating. Low grade. To Emo Xiaoxin was speechless. This was equivalent to the process of forging a sword. The sword had to be taken out of the mold and cooled before it could be completely formed. The only difference was that demonic chefs used heat to imprint the spiritual energy sequencing in the ingredients. After all, it was not easy to walk, so it was naturally impossible to run away. There are only 3 left. Do as you see fit. He subconsciously opened his spirit eye and began to check the situation of the spiritual fish. It's normal. It's not difficult at all. The day before the demonic chef's final trial, Emo Xiaoxin. Then he took out his tools and was ready to try it himself with anticipation. Seeing that his mother succeeded on her first try and even made a high-grade, first-grade ingredient, Emo Xiaoxin was very excited. Under the state of the spirit eye, the spiritual fish in Emo Xiaoxin's eyes was completely filled with spiritual energy points. Okay, Emo Lanlan took the spiritual fish and then took out her tools from the space. F***CK. Emo Xiaoxin stared at his pocket. Chapter 491. Mo Xiaoxin originally wanted to say something to refute his mother's mockery, but in the end he lowered his head. After all, she was his mother. Even if he won, he would still be beaten. In front of his mother, he could only pretend to be the weak one and accept the adversity after the mistake. Mo Xiaoxin became more cautious. He held the demonic chef's knife tightly in his right hand and began to carefully cut the spiritual energy in the body of the spiritual fish, arranging the spiritual energy points. But even though Mo Xiaoxin had memorized dozens of spiritual energy arrangements in his mind, he still made frequent mistakes in practice. Brain, I've memorized it all. It's not a big problem in practice. Hand, don't talk nonsense. You do it. Mo Xiaoxin was in such a state now. After 4 days of hard work, he had a solid foundation in theory and did not need to follow the books. But in practice, Hand said that he had not learned it yet. After a round of cutting, the spiritual fish was considered useless. Green fruit fish, spiritual fish. Creature details, dead. Due to the destruction of the spiritual energy inside, all the spiritual energy leaked and lost its value. Creature evaluation, worthless, edible. Mo Xiaoxin was extremely sad that he had died on the first step before reaching the second step. Looking at the useless fish on the chopping board, Mo Xiaoxin grabbed the fish tail and slammed it on the chopping board. I'm not practicing anymore. I give up. TSK, 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 look at how useless you are. You begged your mother to come and learn. But you gave up early. Mo Lanlan, who was picking her teeth with a fishbone, said to Mo Xiaoxin with a smile. I've never used a knife before. I'm a sorcerer. Mo Xiaoxin said unwillingly. Looks like the Mo family's knife technique is extinct. Oh, right. There's also the Ao family's sword technique. The ancestors probably never thought that their descendant would play sorcerer. Son, beautiful. Mo Lanlan said with a smile. What Ao family's sword technique and Mo family's knife technique? Mom, explain it to me. Mo Xiaoxin asked with a puzzled look. The Ao clan is the bloodline of your father who eats, drinks, and gambles. The descendants of their bloodline are all very powerful experts of the sword sect, and their bloodline is very mysterious. There is only one descendant in each generation, and they are all boys. They will also choose to practice the sword, and you are the descendant of their generation. Aren't you very surprised? Mo Lanlan said with a smile. No wonder his swordsmanship is so strong that even Mu Jioga, an expert swordsman in real life, is no match for him. Mo Xiaoxin nodded in realization. Then what is the Mo clan's saber technique that you mentioned? Your old mother is the descendant of the Mo family's saber technique. However, she is not the inheritor because your old mother is a woman. Mo Lanlan said with a smile. Then why don't you ever bring me to see Grandpa and Grandma? Mo Xiaoxin asked softly. They like boys because they think that only boys can inherit the Mo family saber techniques. They don't like your old mother at all. Mo Lanlan's tone was light when she said this, but Mo Xiaoxin's heart trembled. Although his mother always had an indifferent attitude, he knew that his mother had suffered a lot. At this moment, he suddenly understood why his mother was so addicted to the internet. Obviously, she had suffered too much in real life, including that bastard of a father who was obsessed with swordsmanship. Therefore, she chose to escape and became addicted to the virtual world. Thinking of this, Mo Xiaoxin suddenly had no good impression of his relatives, whom he had never met. Damn it, only boys can inherit the legacy. What's wrong with my mother? Then, mother, how did you meet him and how did you end up together? Mo Xiaoxin continued to ask. Back then, this bastard challenged people everywhere in order to practice his swordsmanship. Then he came to your mother and said that he wanted to challenge the Mo family's saber technique. What happened in the end? Mo Xiaoxin asked curiously. Of course, your mother won. She beat him until he knelt and begged for mercy. Don't you think about your mother's strength? How could he compare to her? Mo Lanlan said with a smile. No way, mother, you're bragging again. Mo Xiaoxin believed what his mother said earlier, but he definitely did not believe that Ao Jian could not defeat his mother. The difference in strength was obvious. I think the specific development of the story should be that you were defeated by him. Then, you, who had a bad temper, were not willing to accept it. So you fought again, lost again. The cycle repeated. After a long time, the two of you developed feelings for each other. Then, you eloped with him. You ran to a remote place and gave birth to me. Mo Xiaoxin said with a smile. Son, I've told you since you were young that it's not good to be too smart. Why didn't you listen? Mo Lanlan squinted her eyes and smiled as she slowly stood up. The smile on Mo Xiaoxin's face instantly froze. At this moment, he suddenly remembered the time when he asked his mother if he could spend the night with a glass of water. Even now, he could still vividly remember that vicious beating. Sure enough, being too smart in front of your mother will get you beaten. On the last day, basically all the players who participated in the demonic chef trial had tried to make gluttony by themselves. However, practice and theory were two completely different concepts. Spiritual ingredients were precious to begin with. On this day, many players had bankrupted themselves in order to practice their skills. If they could not control the use of the demonic chef knife, it was easy to destroy the originally arranged spiritual energy combination in the ingredients, causing the spiritual energy to leak out. Then, the spiritual ingredients would be completely useless. Although chefs with good knife skills had an advantage in this aspect, it was still incomparable to the players who were in the carving industry. However, there was never a lack of skilled players among the players. In these few days, there were also many players who made finished gluttony. However, there were still many players who were full of expectations and felt that they could make a name for themselves. However, they fell into isolation during practice. On the last day, the trial test finally arrived with the appearance of the game's notification. Server announcement. The demonic chef trial test will begin at 2:00 p.m. All players who are participating in this trial, please enter the trial venue through the activity panel. You will have 10 minutes to enter the venue. 5 days was undoubtedly too short for the players. Even the simplest beginner's manual was not finished by the players. In order to prepare for the test, they basically picked the key points to study. However, it was precisely because of the lack of time that the first batch of the most talented players could be selected. This was also Lu Wu's goal. In Lu Wu's vision, all the life professions were established to serve the large group of players. If everyone was a life profession, then who would fight? After all, Lu Wu's biggest source of soul coins came from the players killing monsters and leveling up, as well as the war against the outside world. This was also the foundation and core of the growth of the players. A small number of talented life profession players could speed up the development of the players, but if the number was too large, it would instead slow down the development of the players. Therefore, Lu Wu limited the number of slots and distributed them in batches. It was not that Lu Wu was stingy, but it was for the overall development of the players. Lu Wu also attached great importance to this trial test. After the trial test began, and the players entered the trial space, Lu Wu began to supervise the test through the artifact. The demonic chef trial test was divided into 2 steps. One was the core step, which was to use the demonic chef knife to cut the spiritual ingredients and rearrange the spiritual energy. This step was also the most complicated step. There were many ways to combine the spiritual energy, and it was a difficult task to use the existing spiritual energy in the ingredients to combine the most effective food. The second step was the cooking process of using high temperature to combine the spiritual energy into the ingredients. Although this step was not as complicated as the first step, if there was a mistake, it would be equivalent to wasting all the previous efforts. This test was a closed-book test. The beginner's handbook of demonic chef that the players had stored in the space was confiscated by Lu Wu during the trial test. It would not be returned before the players left the trial test venue. As the number of Battle League players increased, so did the number of applicants. The space required for the trial test also increased. Moreover, this time, all 4 servers started the trial test at the same time. The number of participating players was incomparably large. If it was an ordinary game server, faced with such overload, it would have collapsed long ago. However, for Lu Wu, who had the artifact, this was not a problem. After all, the artifact could mobilize the 6 paths of reincarnation. It could even contain all the souls of the 3 realms, so this number of players was naturally not a problem. After the trial officially began, all the participating players had an ingredient selection panel appear in front of them. Since everything in the trial space was a virtual item, the players could choose any spiritual ingredients from the panel. This included precious ingredients that were normally impossible to obtain. As long as they thought that they had the ability to handle them, they could choose anything. During the spiritual ingredient selection segment, most of the players did not choose ingredients that were difficult to handle just to obtain high scores. Instead, they cleverly chose low-level spiritual ingredients. This was because the higher the level of the ingredients, the more difficult it was to handle. It was easy to make mistakes, which would instead drag down the score. However, there were also some eccentric players among them. For example, the players who felt that they had no hope of passing the trial and participated only out of curiosity. They were more unscrupulous. Divine beast meat, spirit beast blood, sea spirit level sea beasts, and all kinds of treasures of heaven and earth. They chose whatever was precious and valuable. As for whether or not they could successfully make it, they did not have any hope at all. In short, it was over as long as they were happy. However, there was also a very small group of players who were very confident in their own abilities. They also chose high-end ingredients because they were confident in their abilities. And this group of players was also the focus of Lu Wu's attention. Among them, of course, was Mo Xiaoxin's mother, Mo Lanlan. At this time, she chose a sea spirit level AO fish. After taking out the food from the selection panel, she quickly got into the zone. Holding the magical kitchen knife, she began to handle the AO fish. As the descendant of the Mo family's knife skills, Mo Lanlan's control of the knife had also reached the microscopic level. Her knife skills seemed sharp, but every cut was always just right. Little by little, she reorganized the spiritual energy in the AO fish's body. Her flexible control of the magical kitchen knife was the most eye-catching thing about Mo Lanlan in this trial. Under her control, the spiritual energy in the AO fish became very docile and obedient. It swam in the direction of every cut and assembled into the arrangement that Mo Lanlan wanted. And her biggest weakness was that after every short operation, she would always stop and frown, thinking about what to do next. This kind of behavior could easily lead to the gradual collapse of the unformed spiritual energy combination. However, Mo Lanlan, who did not study hard, could always use her knife skills to reassemble the collapsed spiritual energy combination. This kind of operation made Lu Wu, who was watching from behind the scenes, extremely frustrated. With such strength, couldn't she have studied hard and learned some theory? She could not even memorize the most basic spiritual energy combination. It was simply a waste of her talent. This kind of player should be locked up and not allowed to come out unless she studied well. Maximizing her talent. Chapter 492. The duration of the demonic chef trial was 5 hours. The players had 3 chances to pick their ingredients. The final ranking would be based on the points obtained from the glutton dish with the highest quality. If they chose low-end ingredients, they would have more time because they were easier to process. This was also one of the reasons why most players chose low-end ingredients. High-end ingredients had too many spiritual power points, so they needed to be engraved with multiple spiritual power combinations in order to make full use of them. This undoubtedly prolonged the processing time. For the players who chose high-end ingredients, they might only have 1 chance in 5 hours. Excluding the players who gave up on themselves and chose randomly, those who dared to choose high-end ingredients were undoubtedly those who were confident in their abilities. 3 hours had passed since the trial. Most of the players had finished making their first ingredient. At this moment, the ranking board of the 4 servers was filled with a large number of glutton dishes. However, compared to the monotonous glutton dishes in the other servers, the ranking board of the other servers had a lot of dishes. Stir-fried, deep-fried, 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 pan-fried, pasted, braised, steamed, boiled, braised, mixed, marinated, roasted, marinated, frozen, shredded, honey-glazed, smoked, rolled, steamed, baked. The gluttony made with different cooking methods was dazzling and overwhelming. It could be said that all the cooking methods were available. Seeing this scene, the happiest person was not Lu Wu, but Lil Bailey. As a little expert with special privileges, she was secretly eating the dishes made by the players in the name of supervision. Of course, she had a sense of propriety. She only tasted the dishes before moving on to the next dish. With so many dishes, Lil Bailey felt like she was surrounded by happiness. He took a bite from the left and a bite from the right, eating happily. Moreover, as a little gourmet, she specially picked the dishes that were rated highly by the artifact. Like a little mouse looking for food, she wandered around the trial space. The joy of secretly eating was great for Lil Bailey. Although they were all virtual dishes and she could not eat her fill, the taste experience was there. Hence, to Lil Bailey it was all the same. In the 4th hour of the trial, the players began to speed up the production of glutton. Whether they had the ability to advance to the top 10,000 and obtain the qualification to become a demonic chef was about to be revealed. Due to the existence of the ranking board, the players could see the ranking of the glutton that they submitted on the leaderboard. This undoubtedly increased the tension of the trial exam. When many players saw that they had not entered the top 10,000, they decided to cut off all means of retreat and started choosing high-end ingredients for their final push. Of course, the success rate of such a choice was extremely low, because he didn't have enough time to begin with, coupled with the fact that he had to choose spirit materials that were difficult to process. It increased the difficulty of the crafting process, so it was difficult to complete. The intense competition was very immersive to the players. Many players were so anxious that they were sweating profusely during the crafting process of gluttony. In fact, this was the charm of Battle Royale. The life professions in the game had a complete system. Compared to the life professions in other games, it was more realistic and immersive. Although the content was a little complicated, but it's also the charm of the game. Using one's own skills to defeat the opponent at the same time of victory, one could also obtain a greater sense of accomplishment. The 5th hour, the final sprint stage. The players began to perform all sorts of tricks. In order to advance successfully, the players couldn't care less. In order to speed up the crafting process, they began to create all kinds of knife skills. They didn't pursue anything else but to gain an advantage in speed. Finally, as the game ended, all the ingredients and tools in the players' hands disappeared. Server announcement. The demonic chef trial has officially ended. The list of rewards is as follows. Bakey Division, 1st place. Ammo, Landland Food Creation. Magic Grilled Fish is delicious, self-named. Food Creation. Turtle, Sea Spirit Level. Cooking Method. Charcoal Grilling Score. 3,711 points for Operation Technique. Due to too many pauses during the crafting process, several spiritual energy arrays were on the verge of collapsing. Although it was corrected in time, due to insufficient theoretical study, 1,500 points were deducted for technique. Total score is 2,211 points. Game reward: 1 epic level demonic chef knife, eternal Kyla knife, and the qualification to become a demonic chef. Bakey Division, 2nd place. Tang Xiaochuan Food Creation, Magic 9 Carp Leaping Through the Dragon Gate, self-named. As the final ranking of the 4 divisions was announced, some players were happy while others were sad. Among them, the first contestant from the main division, Mo Lanlan, had caused a heated discussion among the players of the 4 main servers. At this moment in the forum, Shueli_the_strongest. Is the first contestant we serve so capricious? Let's not talk about the idiotic name she gave to gluttony. The deduction for her technique is 1,500 points, which is 4 times more than my total score. How did she do it? Black guy asking good face. Watermelon _ taro. Haha, I'm dying of laughter. The name of the dish is grilled fish is delicious. Looks like we have another capable contestant among the idiotic players. Applause assassin _ creed. Did you guys notice? This player's cooking method is the most unstable charcoal grilling method. What kind of godly operation is this? I suspect that she was just playing around in the trial. She's just too strong that she managed to get the first place, even though she was courting death. Dumbfounding emote. JPG, Peppa _ Boar. The commenter above is right. This player is definitely playing around. She even said grilled fish is delicious. If I were the judge, I would deduct 10,000 points from her just because of this name. The reason is that she didn't take the exam seriously. Laughing emoji. Crayon _ Shinchan replied to Peppa _ Boar. Little Boar, go ahead and get the first place if you're so good. Laughing emoji. Peppa _ Boar replied to Crayon _ Shinchan. Hey, I didn't do anything to you. Sad emoji. Fashion _ worldwide. The name list is out. Tonight, a group of players are destined to skyrocket in value. It's also destined that the major guilds are going to have another round of talent acquisition. I think I can see a bloodbath coming. Laughing emoji. Apart from the original server's forum, the forums of the other 3 servers were also discussing the rankings of their respective regions. It was the first time since the launch of Battle Royale that all 4 servers started the trial at the same time. It was inevitable that they would compare themselves with each other. According to the total individual points, Paul Bogus from the European server had the highest individual points among the 4 servers. He had a total of 2,339 points. However, in terms of the highest individual points, Paul Bogus only had a total of 2,419 points. 80 points were deducted from his technique. On the other hand, Mo Lon from the original server had the highest score of more than 3,700 points. One could say that she had crushed Paul Bogus by a large margin. A deduction of 1,500 skill points was more than enough for any player to enter the top 500 in their own region, or even higher. The players could not imagine how she did it. After that, the players of the 4 servers started their daily wrangling over the question of who was the best demon chef in the entire server. In this daily wrangling, the players of the 4 servers were determined to follow a principle. Our server is the strongest. The other 3 servers are all trash. What do you mean by the highest score? What do you mean by the highest overall score? You can't see it. We are the strongest. In order to maintain the dignity of the players in their own server, the players of the 4 servers turned into Crayon _ Shinchan and started bickering with each other. It was a joyous scene. Chapter 493. Kowloon Ocean, Xinmo Island. The Sea King was dressed in a long blue robe. He was accompanied by a few feudal lords as he walked on the beach on the east side of the island. At this moment, his eyebrows were tightly furrowed as he looked at the distant sea, as if he was troubled by something. Suddenly he stopped. Sha Shui and the others who were following behind him stopped as well. Monarch, what's wrong? Hei Sui, who was following behind, immediately asked. When the Sea King heard this, he did not say anything. He shook his head and walked forward again. Regarding the current situation in the Kowloon Ocean, the Sea King felt that he was getting more and more unfathomable. Originally, it was just a battle between the Mu-Te Sea Nation that he established and the allied forces of Langia Island. However, the heir of the Nether Sea Nation, Tianlan, suddenly joined the fray. Tianlan, who controlled the Stone Statue Army, was undoubtedly a force that could not be ignored at that time. The Sea King had also been worried about this, afraid that she would side with the forces of Langia Island because of her father. When the 2 forces joined forces, the Mu-Te Empire that he controlled would not be able to resist them. However, the Sea King did not expect that the Nether Sea Nation's inheritance force would be annihilated so quickly before it could fully display its prowess. However, the disappearance of this force did not bring peace to the Kowloon Ocean. Instead, it brought about a greater crisis. The source of all this trouble was the Ocean Allied Chamber of Commerce, also known as the Underworld Chamber of Commerce. Back then, Tianlan, who controlled the Stone Statue Army, had been too unscrupulous. He had plundered a large number of sea merchants' goods without any regard for the consequences. As a huge, united organization that spanned across all the seas, it wasn't that the Underworld Merchant Guild hadn't had its resources plundered before, but all the plunders were suppressed by the Underworld Merchant Guild with lightning speed, and their fates were extremely miserable. The Netherworld Merchant Group's attitude towards plundering had always been like this. This was because if they didn't do anything about it, then the situation of them being plundered would only become more and more frequent. Thus, the Yellow Springs Merchant Group attached great importance to this kind of situation. Recently, the Sea Merchant Force Smoke Dragon entered the Kowloon Ocean forcefully, preparing to investigate the matter of their goods being plundered. He also issued a gathering order to all the forces in the Kowloon Ocean, hoping that all the forces in the Kowloon Ocean would cooperate actively. Although he hoped that the various forces would cooperate, everyone knew the consequences of not cooperating. The reason why the Underworld Sea Merchant Group was able to survive for so many years was because they were not weak. Internally, they had specially cultivated a group of powerful Sea Chamber of Commerce. This group of Sea Chamber of Commerce did not do business. Their mission was to fight against foreign enemies. Whenever a subordinate force was being robbed or invaded, they would ask for reinforcements from the Underworld Sea Merchants headquarters. That was when these war merchants would show up. The smoke dragon that came to the Kowloon Ocean this time was the famous War Trade Association in the Sea Trade Association. Their arrival brought great pressure to the Sea King. That was because the Smoke Dragon Merchant Guild was too powerful. They were so powerful that even the entire Mute Sea Nation could not fight them. The Sea King could not come to a conclusion whether it was good or bad, but he was mentally prepared. At this moment, Hei Sui asked in a low voice, "Your Majesty, are you worried about the Smoke Dragon Trading Company's meeting on Black Reef Island tomorrow?" Upon hearing this, the Sea King stopped in his tracks. "What do you think of this matter?" Sha, Shui, Hei Sui, and the other lords looked at each other when they heard that. Then Hei Sui stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, since the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association is here to investigate the matter of the goods being stolen, it shouldn't have anything to do with us, right? When the time comes, just tell us everything we know. You're too naive." Lan Hushan, who was standing beside Hei Sui, shook his head. "Think about it carefully. This incident was caused by Tianlan, and Tianlan's father, Tian Kuan, was once loyal to you. This is already related to us. Tian Kuan, the traitor, has already surrendered to Langia Island. How can you say that it's related to us?" Hei Sui frowned. "But he's dead now. So what if he's dead? Is he not a traitor if he's dead?" Hei Sui was shocked. Lan Hushan sighed when he heard this. If you were the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association and investigated the matter from their point of view, you would realize that Tianlan, who stole the goods, was once a subordinate of the Mute Empire. The army she used to rob the sea merchants was the Nether Sea Nation's Stone Statue Legion. We are all descendants of the Nether Sea Nation. All of this has too much to do with us. If the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association wants to investigate, most of the clues will point to us, who are also descendants of the Nether Sea Nation. The biggest connection between Langia Island and this incident is only Tian Kuan. Moreover, his daughter, Tianlan, has never surrendered to Langia Island. Hei Sui was shocked when he heard this. Are you afraid that the bastards from Langia Island will plot against us during the meeting? I can't rule out that possibility. Therefore, in tomorrow's meeting, I think it's best for us to provide information that links Tianlan to Langia Island. We'll try our best to make the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association suspicious of Langia Island. If we don't do anything, Langia Island will definitely do the same. Actually, all of you have forgotten one thing. The Smoke Dragon Merchant Association will have another guess. The Sea King said. Monarch, what do you mean? Hei Sui quickly asked after understanding the seriousness of the situation. Don't you think all of this is too much of a coincidence? After a large amount of resources were stolen, the plundering force suddenly disappeared. Even Tian Cohen, who knew the whole story the best, died. If you were the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association's force, would you suspect that all of this was manipulated by someone to plunder resources and create a fog after they succeeded? Hearing this, the rulers of the various countries were shocked. Monarch, do you mean that the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association might suspect that all of this was secretly instructed by us? The Sea King shook his head. I don't know what they will think, but no matter what, it will be very disadvantageous to us. Hei Sui and the other lords fell silent after hearing this. Thinking about it carefully, this incident was indeed too much of a coincidence. Tianlan, who controlled the Nether Sea Nation's Stone Statue Legion, had mysteriously disappeared. If the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association suspected that all of this was secretly done by the Mu-Te Empire, the descendants of the Nether Sea Nation, then they would have to face unimaginable pressure. The information we provide in tomorrow's meeting must lead all the clues to Langia Island. The Sea King said. I understand. Hei Sui and the others nodded immediately. After a night of discussion, the Sea King and his subordinates finally came up with a plan to provide information. As the sea surface glowed, the Sea King waved his hand toward the sea. Suddenly, a round disk flew out of his forehead and hovered above the sea surface, expanding rapidly. Let's go. Hei Sui and the others nodded immediately and followed the Sea King onto the Death Ray Light wheel. Under the Sea King's control, the Death Ray Light wheel turned into a black light and sped toward the north. After a few hours of rushing, the Sea King arrived at Black Reef Island. He found that the island was already filled with various types of oceanic warships and countless sea beasts. Faced with the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association summons, not only did the Sea King and Langia Island join forces, but also many weaker forces that never showed themselves responded to the summons. This showed how much deterrence the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association had for the Kowloon forces. Under the Sea King's control, the Death Ray Light will descended rapidly. With his arrival, many Kowloon forces quickly retreated. After landing, the Sea King waved his hand to recall the Death Ray Light wheel. Then, he led Hei Sui and the other lords into the island. At this moment, the surrounding crowd was in an uproar. The Sea King sensed something and turned to look at the sea surface. On the surface of the sea, countless warships gathered in groups and were heading toward Black Reef Island. On the deck of the leading black warship, a smoke dragon flag was raised high, shining brightly under the sun. On the flag, a giant dragon formed by gray clouds and mist was faintly discernible. Sometimes it danced around the flag, and sometimes it hid into the flag and turned into a totem. In the sky above the warship, dark clouds were low and thunder was lingering. From time to time, lightning would strike and cause huge waves on the sea surface. The Smoke Dragon Merchant Association. The Sea King squinted his eyes slightly. After a moment of contemplation, he stopped in place. After a while, the fleet docked and the dark clouds surrounded by thunder approached. Suddenly, many of the Kowloon forces began to retreat, afraid of being struck by the accompanying thunder and lightning. At this moment, gangways were lowered, and the members of the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association began to disembark. These members of the Merchant Association were all wearing black uniforms. Each of them had the word smoke embroidered on their shoulders, and they were all carrying wooden boxes in their hands. The leading man had short crimson hair. His eyes were lifeless, and his smile was extremely sickly. There was not a trace of vitality in his body, as if he would collapse at any time. "Is everyone here? Thank you for coming all the way here." The leading man from the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association looked around and said with a smile, "Everyone, please come in." Seeing that no one responded, the man did not get angry. He continued to say with a smile, and then took the lead to walk into the island. Upon seeing this, the people present quickly made way for him. Seeing the approaching people from the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association, the Sea King's face turned gloomy. After some thought, he also chose to make way. The people from the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association did not seem to notice the difference between the Sea King and the others. They walked straight past them. "Follow them." After they walked past, the Sea King said in a deep voice, and then followed behind. Upon seeing this, the rest of the forces immediately followed behind and walked into the island. Black Reef Island. This island was the Kowloon Ocean branch of the Netherworld Merchant Association's joint forces. This was also the reason why the Kowloon forces were gathered here. Inside the island, there were countless seabirds flying in the sky. Each seabird was holding a box of different sizes. These seabirds were specially trained transport birds by the Sea Trade Association. Their main role was to help the merchants categorize the internal goods and transport them internally. Following the members of the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association, the crowd entered the island and set up a huge square. Due to the large number of forces that came, the meeting venue was set up in the square. At this moment, many forces were already present. This included the Sea King's archenemy, the Langia Island forces. "Everyone, please take your seats." The leading man from the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association turned around and said with a smile. He then walked to the front of the square. Upon hearing this, the Sea King looked at the less than 100 seats in the square. He immediately walked in, picked a seat, and sat down. Hei Sui and the rest naturally followed and sat behind the Sea King. There were many forces that came this time, but there were only 100 seats. Obviously, those who could sit here were the members of the forces that had the right to speak in the Kowloon Ocean. The Sea King brought 6 people this time, and they stood in a total of 7 seats. Langia brought more than 20 people, and they all sat down. The members of the Kowloon forces at the back looked at each other. Although there were dozens of seats left, no one dared to sit. The Sea King and Langia were the leaders of the 2 strongest forces in the Kowloon Ocean, so they were qualified to sit. However, they were just weak forces that survived in the cracks. They were afraid of offending the 2 overlords of the Kowloon Ocean, so naturally they did not dare to step forward. The leader of the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association, who was standing at the front, looked at this scene with a smile. After a while he said, "Why are you all standing? Aren't there still empty seats?" As the Smoke Dragon spoke, he glanced at the members of the Kowloon forces at the back. "Are you really not going to sit?" Still no one spoke or moved. Upon seeing this, a smile appeared on the Smoke Dragon's face. The distribution of forces in the Kowloon Ocean was clear at a glance. However, just as he was about to announce the start of the meeting, a large number of figures suddenly squeezed out of the crowd. "Wow, there's still a seat even though we're late. When the players set off, not even a blade of grass will grow. No, we're only here to attend the meeting this time. There's still a seat left for us. This means that the reputation of us players is getting better. Happy, son of AB*, teach, don't fight over it. That seat is mine. All of you are like dogs. It's only been a few seconds, and you're done fighting over it? Can't you have some manners when you're outside?" As the Smoke Dragon, the Sea King, Langia, and the others were dumbfounded, the players arrived. In the blink of an eye, the remaining empty seats were filled. What was even more unbelievable was that they actually quarreled with each other over the seats. Chapter 494. Many small forces received the notice of the Smoke Dragon Trade Association's gathering. The summoning message was posted on all the major trading islands in Kowloon. That was how the players found out about it. Players who felt that they were part of a force in the Kowloon Ocean would naturally not miss out on such a prestigious meeting. Among them, the low-level sea merchants such as the Myth and the Relocation Office, who were trading with the Void Ocean in Kowloon, came after hearing the news. Seeing the players' arrival, Smoke Dragon could not help but frown. He shifted his gaze to the Sea King and Lanya. Obviously, the forces they belonged to were the two strongest forces in the Kowloon Ocean. Hence, Smoke Dragon wanted to see their reactions. However, he did not expect the Sea King and Lanya to remain silent despite frowning. Smoke Dragon could not understand. Could it be that this force is equally powerful in the Kowloon Ocean and has a high status? That shouldn't be the case. Didn't the information given to me before I came say that there are two opposing forces in the Kowloon Ocean? Thinking of this, the Smoke Dragon was a little confused, but he didn't say much. His face once again showed a sickly smile. Great, the seats are full now. Let's start the meeting. Before the meeting begins, I would like to have a private talk with the leaders of each force. We, the Acheron Trade Association, attach great importance to the robbery of the merchant ships in the Kowloon Ocean. I hope that your information is accurate, otherwise he. As it spoke, Smoke Dragon glanced at the people sitting around, trying to see their expressions. The Sea King frowned, Lanya was expressionless, and the players were dumbfounded. The only thing missing from their faces was the word confused. This made Smoke Dragon frown again, but he did not say anything. He then waved his hand and a light curtain rolled forward, locking Lanya and pulling him into an independent space. Although everything in the outside world could be seen in this transparent space, it was constantly being distorted. It was also because of this distorted space that the people in the outside world could not hear the conversation through the distorted space, even though they could see what was happening inside. Lord Lanya, can you tell me what you know? Smoke Dragon said with a smile as he looked at Lanya, who was surprised. After a short moment of surprise, Lanya nodded with a solemn expression. President Smoke Dragon, to be honest, Lanya Island is partly at fault for this incident. Oh! The smile on Yan Long's face became wider. It's like this. 2 months ago, a lord from the Mute Empire came to us. According to Lanya's description, Tian Kuan didn't know about him joining them. But Yen Long understood the meaning behind Langya's words. He nodded after Lanya finished. Island Lord Lanya, can I take it that way? Do you think that Lord Tian Kuan was sent by the Mute Sea Nation to join your forces, and that he didn't really want to surrender? Moreover, the incident of the merchant ship being robbed happened, so that the Mute Sea Nation could confuse us and make us suspect you? That's right. After the incident, Tian Kuan, who came to seek refuge, disappeared without a trace. I suspect that the Mute Sea Nation is framing us. President Yen Long, I can assure you that the forces of Lanya Island would never do anything that would harm the interests of the Underworld Chamber of Commerce. After all, we have been trading for so many years, and nothing like this has ever happened. The Mute Sea Nation is a newly established force in the Kowloon Ocean. It's inevitable that they would be blinded by greed in order to expand. Hearing this, the Smoke Dragon nodded with a smile and did not say anything else. He waved his hand and put away the distorted space. Both of their figures appeared in the outside world. President Yen Long looked at the Sea King and nodded slightly. He then waved his hand and used the distorted space to envelop him. As the surrounding space began to distort, the sound of the outside world was completely isolated. Yen Long looked at the Sea King. King of the Mute Sea Nation, do you know what island Lord Lanya told me just now? The Sea King said in a deep voice he must be framing the Mute Sea Nation for all the unnecessary crimes. Oh! When Smoke Dragon heard this, a smile appeared on his face. Do you think that this incident has anything to do with the Mute Sea Nation? Yes, but it's not a big deal. Instead, I think that all of this might have something to do with the forces of Lanya Island. Haha, you guys are really interesting. Tell me what you know. Then let me tell you the beginning of the incident. At that time, the Mutesi nation was at a disadvantage in the battle with the allied forces of Lengya Island. We were facing the threat of annihilation. At that moment, one of my lords, Tian Kuan, betrayed us under the influence of Lengya in order to protect himself. The Sea King's description was different from what Lengya had said. Although there were similarities, the meaning was completely different. According to the Sea King's description, Tian Kuan's betrayal was not initiated. He was persuaded by Lengya to surrender. Moreover, according to the Sea King, after Tian Kuan's betrayal, the mastermind of the robbery, Tianlan, also left. He did not leave before Tian Kuan's betrayal. The Sea King described the relationship between the two of them as deep father-daughter love. At that moment, the Sea King did not know that Tian Kuan, who had disappeared a long time ago, was killed by a slap from Tianlan. However, this did not affect the Sea King's attempt to smooth things over. What he needed to do now was to mess up the whole thing. Otherwise, even if he really did not rob the merchant ship, all the clues would still be against him. This was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. Most of the time, there was no need for evidence. As long as there were enough clues to prove that you were the mastermind, the other party would take harsh measures to suppress you. This was because there was no law in this world. After listening to the Sea King's description, Yanlong still had a smile on his face. He clapped his hands lightly. You guys are really interesting. You put all the blame on each other. However, what you don't know is that we already have a lot of clues. King of the Sea King, are you sure you don't want to change your story? The Sea King nodded calmly. Everything I said is true. Also, President Yanlong, where did you get the clues from? Could it be fake news leaked by Lengya Island? Yanlong's face froze when he heard this. In fact, he did obtain a lot of investigation information about the robbery incident when he came to the Kowloon Ocean this time. However, the intelligence department that provided the information also said that the authenticity of the information had to be investigated by him personally. It was not enough to determine the truth. Thinking of this, Yanlong could not help but nod. King of the Sea King, I'll remember what you said. I hope you really didn't lie to me. The Sea King nodded indifferently. The distorted space dissipated at this time, and the figures of the Sea King and Yanlong appeared in the outside world. This time, Yanlong looked at the players. According to the information he obtained, there were only two major forces in the Kowloon Ocean. The leaders were the Sea King and Lengya Island. At this moment, there were so many players sitting in the seats that he could not tell who the leader was at all. Who is the leader of this third force? Yanlong could not help but ask. The players looked at each other when they heard this. Although they knew that Yanlong was talking about the players, it was not easy to answer the question of who the leader was. After all, there was a huge difference between the players and the forces present. In other forces, the strongest person was the leader. However, among the players, the strongest person was not the leader. Even a level 1 newbie player and a level 200 player could not order him to do anything. Strength did not represent power among the players. Seeing that no one responded, Yanlong could not help but frown. Me. At this time, a little white dog with long horns stood up from the seat and raised its paw. Gu Yu and Lu Chai, who were beside the dog, could not help but cover their faces. Scissors, stone, and cloth actually lost. Mother *her, whether it was the smoke dragon, the Sea King, or Lengya, all of them were stunned when they saw the dog standing up excitedly. Obviously, the dog did not look like the players at all. If he said that he was a pet, there would definitely be people who would believe him. If he said that he was the leader, it would be too fake. Of course, in the dog's opinion, he was no different from the players. They were all the same, although he had said this in the guild before. However, the guild members all replied, "You're the King Dog." After a moment of silence, Yanlong waved his hand at the dog. Suddenly, the distorted space separated the two of them from the outside world. How should I address you? Looking at the dog, Yanlong smiled. Dog. My name is Sun Chi. So, Leader Sun Chi, what do you think about the recent events in the Kowloon Ocean? Yanlong asked with a smile. What are you talking about? Sun Chi was dumbfounded. At this moment, the veins on Yanlong's forehead were throbbing. He took a deep breath and could not help but remind, "It's about the incident where the merchant ships were plundered." Hearing this, the dog's mind automatically came up with matters related to the merchant ships. However, during the period when Tianlong began to plunder the merchant ships, a tyrant named Dr. Hai appeared and chased most of the players in the Kowloon Ocean back to the Void Ocean or even Baiki. During that period, there were almost no ships in the Kowloon Ocean. Hence, they did not know about the major plundering incident that happened in the Kowloon Ocean during that period. Therefore, the dog immediately thought of Dr. Hai, and a vicious expression appeared on his face. You mean the bastard who specialized in plundering, the one who smashed countless merchant ships? Oh, you know who that is? Yanlong's face showed a surprised expression. How could I not know? Many merchant ships were sunk by him. During that period of time, that bastard was simply a devil. Thinking of Dr. Hai, the dog was displeased. After all, he had fought with him before. At that time, Dr. Hai almost silenced the warship that they used to transport important supplies. Fortunately, an NPC came to the rescue in the end. Then who is he? Yanlong's smile grew wider. Eunuch Hai. He's that bastard who does all kinds of evil. You're looking for him, aren't you? You have to teach him a lesson. Wherever this guy goes, players die. He's simply insane. Eunuch Hai. Yanlong was a little confused as he had not heard of this character in his intelligence. Yes, that's the guy. His full name is Dr. Hai. He looks like a thief, and you can tell that he's not a good person at first glance. Which force does he belong to? Yanlong quickly asked. What force could he belong to? The most annoying thing about this guy is that he's a bachelor, and he doesn't have a place to stay. He just roams around aimlessly. Wherever he goes, people die. If he has any force, our player clan will never let him go. The dog said and could not help but roll his eyes. Hearing this, Yanlong suddenly felt a headache. He could understand that the Sea King and Langya were blaming each other because they were originally enemies. However, now there was another suspect, a guy called Dr. Hai. It could be said that the information provided by the three forces was completely different, especially the leader of the force, who called himself Sun Chi. Why did it feel like he was telling a different story from the previous two? Chapter 495. After the conversation with the leaders of the three forces, Yen Dragon could not help but frown. The information provided by them was too confusing in Yen Dragon's opinion. Not to mention that they could not be combined into a single clue. It seemed like they were not describing the same incident. Before talking to Sun Chi, Yen Dragon originally wanted to investigate the two major forces in the Kowloon Ocean, namely the Sea King and Langya. However, after listening to Sun Chi, he suddenly became interested in Dr. Hai. Although Sun Chi might be lying to him, he would naturally order his men to investigate and verify it. Is there anything else you want to ask? Oh yes, I heard that you are a very powerful sea merchant. Are you interested in doing business? Our Myth Chamber of Commerce is not weak either. Sun Chi asked with anticipation. Recently, under Guyu's leadership, the Myth Guild had been traveling between Kowloon and the Void Ocean, earning a lot of spiritual materials and resources. It could be said that during this period of time, the Myth Guild had enjoyed the benefits of the sea trade. The main reason they came here this time was because they heard that the Yen Dragon Chamber of Commerce was very powerful and wanted to find some opportunities to cooperate. No need. Yen Dragon immediately shook his head. From Yen Dragon's point of view, a small sea merchant that was not even recognized by the Acheron Chamber of Commerce could not be very promising. Moreover, they were a war chamber of commerce and had never engaged in sea trade. Sun Chi was dissatisfied when he heard that. Just when he was about to speak, he saw Yen Dragon waving his hand, and the distorted space instantly dissipated. He returned to his seat. Everyone, I have roughly understood the whole story. Let's officially start the meeting." As he spoke, Yen Dragon gave a look to the people behind him. Suddenly, his subordinates standing behind him opened the wooden boxes in their hands and took out the papers. They then distributed the papers to the people present, including the small forces in Kuelong who were watching from the back. "Exam? Aren't we here to talk about the sea trade cooperation?" "How the hell would I know? I heard that this sea merchant is very powerful. That's why I came." "Brother Go, tell us, what did you guys talk about?" "I had enough of the exam and the war. Now that I'm overseas, I'm going to flip the table." Looking at the papers, the players discussed among themselves, and their faces looked a little gloomy. That was because they had just gone through 5 days of hard work a few days ago. Most importantly, they hadn't even passed the exam. Let me explain that the paper in your hands is made from the heart-connecting tree of 9 orifices, which grows in the center of the Yellow Spring Sea. It can sense your thoughts, and the color of the paper will change according to your emotions. Next, hold the paper and answer my questions. Looking at the crowd, a sickly smile appeared on Yen Long's face again. Since he had come, it was impossible for him not to make preparations. The paper made from the 9 orifices, clear tree, was his trump card. The Sea King and Lang Ye's expressions changed upon hearing this, because this was something they had never thought of. The leaders of the various races all had fearful expressions on their faces. They were deeply afraid that their thoughts would bring disaster upon their own races. Among all the people present, only the players looked calm and even a little excited. This was because the parchment revealed that it was a treasure-grade item. Heart-connecting paper, rank 4 treasure. Item details. A special paper made from the fallen branches of the heart tree of 9 orifices, an ancient tree in the center of the Netherworld Sea. It contains part of the power of the heart tree of 9 orifices. It can detect the current thoughts and emotions of the holder and reflect them on the paper. Specific colors: anger, red; fear, purple; excitement, orange; nervousness, green; grievance, blue. Special effect: distinguish between right and wrong. When lying, the paper will turn completely black. Seeing that the paper was a rank 4 treasure, the players would be lying if they said they didn't want it. After distributing the paper to everyone and making sure that everyone held onto the heart-connecting paper, Yen Long said with a smile, "Do you think this incident has anything to do with the Mutaisi Nation and Langya Island?" As soon as he finished speaking, various colors appeared on the paper in everyone's hands. Basically, it was a mix of different colors, including nervousness, fear, and so on. Yen Long could tell which color occupied the most of the paper and what kind of emotion the person was feeling. At that moment, the Sea King and Langya Island's papers also had colors that reflected their emotions. At that moment, the Sea King and Langya Island could not help but look at the papers in the hands of Kuei Long, who was standing at the back. As their gazes swept across, the purple color on the papers of those people became thicker. At that moment, the members of the various clans knew that the less they knew about this incident, the better. Otherwise, they might bring disaster to their own clans. Yen Long's gaze swept across the crowd. Then he pointed at a murloc standing at the back and said, "Do you think this incident has anything to do with the Mutaisi Nation and Langya Island?" The murloc who was pointed at had his paper instantly covered in purple. Sweat dripped down his face, and he seemed extremely nervous. He said with a trembling voice, "No, nothing to do with it." As soon as he finished speaking, a smear of black appeared on the paper and quickly spread across the paper, slowly covering the purple color. In the end, the entire paper turned black. Obviously, his real thought was something to do with it. "I've said it before. You'll have to pay the price for lying to me." As he spoke, Yen Long's face showed a hint of ferocity. He glared at the murloc, and suddenly, the murloc who had just answered the question began to smoke. Then his entire body was set ablaze, and he turned into ashes in the blink of an eye. Seeing this scene, the crowd was in an uproar. Their hearts were filled with extreme fear. Regarding this incident in the Kuei Long Ocean, everyone present had their own guesses. Many of them suspected the Sea King or Lang, yet Island, to be related to Tianlan. Facing such an inquiry, if he were to speak his mind, he would definitely offend the two major forces. The consequences would be unbearable for him and even his clan. Other than the players, all the forces present felt immense pressure. Next, I hope that everyone will cooperate with our investigation. Let's continue. As he spoke, Yanlong looked at the crowd. The main reason he chose to sit here this time was to make an example to the forces in power in the Kuei Long Ocean. He wanted them to know that they had to speak the truth when facing him. The second question between the Langya Island Lord and the Mute monarch. Who do you think is more likely to collude with Tianlan? Hearing this, the papers in the hands of the Sea King and Lang, yet Island, quickly turned red. It was obvious that they were furious. Yanlong's gaze swept across the people from the Sea King and Langya Island. However, when his gaze swept across the players, he could not help but show a shocked expression, because the papers in the players' hands were all white. There was not a single trace of emotion on them, even when Yanlong held the macerated paper. There were ripples of emotion on the paper. This scene was really unbelievable to him. Puppets? A guess appeared in Yanlong's mind, but he immediately shook his head. There were obvious life and soul waves on the players. How could they be inanimate objects? This made him a little confused. Why would it be like this? Thinking of this, his gaze swept back and forth among the players. Then he pointed at one of them. What do you think? The player who was pointed at was one of the core members of the Demolition Guild. At this moment, he stood up with a dumbfounded expression. I don't know. As he spoke, the paper in his hand was still white and did not change at all. In fact, the color and emotional feedback on the macerated paper came from the feedback of the soul. However, the souls of the players were Lu Wu's biggest secret, and they were strictly protected by the artifact. How could a mere level 4 precious macerated paper crack it? Therefore, at this moment, the macerated paper could not read any of the players' emotions at all. Hearing the players say, I don't know, Yanlong stared at the paper in his hand, waiting for the paper to change. As time passed, the player's face suddenly showed an impatient expression. In order to find out what was going on, Yanlong could not help but ask, Now, let me ask you a question. If you lie, don't answer the truth. Yanlong's purpose was very simple. He wanted to see if the macerated paper would turn black when the player lied. Didn't you just say that I have to pay the price for lying in front of you? Why did you change your mind? The player who was questioned was dumbfounded. Ha ha ha. You should King cooperate. I want to see what he is going to do. Yes. Dali, will you die if you cooperate? You should have some self-control when you're outside. Hearing the player's words in the live chat channel, Dali's face showed a helpless expression. All right, ask away. I'll lie. Hearing this, Smoke Dragon asked with a serious face, Are you dead or alive? Is this a King question that a human can ask? Can't you ask properly? Dali said angrily, Do you want me to answer dead? CKU. Hearing this answer, the players in the live chat channel burst into laughter. Even the Sea King and Lang, you couldn't help but smile. At this moment, the Sea King could not help but shake his head. He was too familiar with the players. Facing an opponent that he could not defeat, even he would feel terrified. However, to the players, even if the opponent was a god, they would not panic. Obviously, Yanlong had met his match this time. I'm asking you to answer. Facing such an attitude from Dali, Yanlong's face showed a hint of ferocity. Coming to the Kuelong Ocean to investigate the plundering incident, he came with a condescending attitude. In his opinion, everyone present must cooperate with him, and no one was allowed to resist. This was because other than the strength he possessed that far surpassed all the forces present, he also had the Acheron Chamber of Commerce behind him. This was the reason why he was so overbearing and where his confidence came from. At this moment, Dali's answer had already annoyed Yanlong. Look at what you're capable of. I initially wanted to find a chance to talk about trade with you guys, but it seems like there's nothing to talk about now. Brothers, let's go." As he spoke, Dali threw the macaroni paper in his hand on the ground, stepped on it, then turned around and walked out. Seeing Dali's decision, Lu Chai immediately stood up, threw the macaroni paper on the ground, stepped on it, then turned around and left. Since Lu Chai had taken the lead, the players immediately followed suit. At this moment in the live chat channel, "What the F asterisk CK? You guys just threw away a rank for precious treasure. You don't want it anymore. Is reputation more important or the treasure more important?" I still think the treasure is more important. "Then you F asterisk can go and pick it up yourself. It'll be too embarrassing to pick it up again. I don't want it anymore. I don't want it anymore." Under Lu Chai's lead, the players stood up one after another, including the people from the Myth Guild. Soon, the players threw away the macaroni paper in their hands and turned around to leave. The Sea King was not surprised by this scene. After all, the players had always been so willful. However, Yan Long's anger had reached its peak. He looked at the players and said in a deep voice, "Whoever takes another step forward will die." Upon hearing this, the players stopped at the same time. Seeing this, Yan Long's face revealed a hideous smile. At this moment, Sun Chi shouted in the live chat channel, 3, 2, 1 inch. Then the players turned around at the same time and gave Yan Long the middle finger. It was neat and uniform, full of vigor. At this moment, the Sea King could not help but laugh out loud. Chapter 496. The players used their actions to explain what it meant to be arrogant and unscrupulous. As the players started to trade on the sea, they no longer did evil things like before. They even formed friendships with many races. However, it didn't mean that the players were afraid of trouble. Facing the oppression of the smoke dragon, the players' best reply was the middle finger. "You're courting death." The smoke dragon's sickly face showed a hint of anger. Then it waved its hand at the players, and the distorted space shrouded the players. "We're back to the city for free," someone shouted in the live chat channel. As death approached, the players naturally wouldn't sit still and wait for it. They were ready to fight back. While shouting counterattack, the players immediately threw all the skills they had accumulated at the smoke dragon. Although they knew that they were no match for the smoke dragon, fighting it was the right move. The distorted space shrouded the players completely. In an instant, nearly half of the players' bodies were torn apart by the distorted space. There were not many players who came here. As it was a core meeting, just like the other races, the players who came were the core members of the Myth Guild and the Demolition Officers. These two guilds had been doing sea trade recently. It turned out that they were only there to discuss business and not to cause trouble. Therefore, the players' resistance was very weak when faced with the smoke dragon's attack. Their attacks could only cause ripples on the distorted space, but they couldn't break the barrier. In an instant, all the players were wiped out, causing fear in the hearts of the people present. After taking a deep breath, the hostility in the smoke dragon's eyes faded, and it said in a deep voice, "Who else wants to leave?" No one spoke, but the smile in the Sea King's eyes deepened. It was obvious that from now on, the relationship between the player clan and the Smoke Dragon Trade Association had changed from neutral to hostile. This was very interesting to the Sea King. Although the player clan's strength seemed to be a dead end against the Smoke Dragon Trade Association, the Sea King had been in contact with the player clan for a long time. The Sea King knew very well how terrifying the players were after being in contact with the player clan for so long. However, he knew one thing better. If the player clan could really defeat the Smoke Dragon Trade Association, they would face the wrath of the Acheron Trade Association Alliance. The Sea King felt that the player clan had no hope of winning against such a huge organization that was famous in all the seas. However, he was somehow looking forward to it. After exiting the game, Guyu and Lu Chai from the Myth Guild started chatting. It had always been the players who provoked others. Even the powerful Langia Island Alliance tried to rope them in. In the end, it was the players who rejected them, and they became enemies. Therefore, Yanlong's actions were too arrogant in their eyes. Thus, they began to discuss how to counterattack. They didn't know much about sea merchants, but ever since they started trading on the sea, they had heard about them from many other races. He knew that this organization was extremely large, and it was an existence that the players could not afford to offend at the moment. Moreover, the players would occasionally trade with the sea merchants, but they never took the initiative to attack them. However, since the Sea Commerce Alliance, represented by the Smoke Dragon, had taken the initiative to attack them, they naturally couldn't take it lying down. After all, this was a game, and it was about taking revenge. What kind of player were you if you held it in? However, this matter was of great importance. After some discussion, Guyu opened a thread on the official forum and attached a video. Regarding the matter of sea merchants, I would like to seek everyone's opinion. Should we declare war? If we do, I suggest forming a pirate crew. Attached is a video of that time. Content: 1,000 words were omitted. As one of the most famous professional players, there were very few players who didn't know about invincible loneliness in the forum. Seeing that it was his post, a large number of players clicked on it. In this post, Guyu described the incident in detail and attached a video explanation. This post quickly caused a heated discussion among the players. Shuali_the_strongest. Fight! We players can't take this lying down. To be honest, we, the Great Dragon Guild, wanted to do sea trade, but none of us in the guild knew how to do business, so we gave up in the end. We also considered becoming pirates, but we were afraid that it would negatively affect our players and cut off the income of our brothers who were doing sea merchants, so we gave up. So, can we form a pirate crew this time? Laughing emoji, hitting a rock with an egg. Fight! 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 Sea trade is the most boring thing. There are all kinds of negotiations and bargains. Why don't we just go straight to the point and plunder them? Let's do it to their richest sea merchants. What are we afraid of? If they can jump out of the game and fight us, Arms Akeem. JPG, watermelon_taro, we can fight. Someone in the forum said that plundering sea merchants could speed up our development, but many people objected at the time. They said that we players were still too weak, and we would have a hard time if we provoked the sea merchants. Now that we've developed, fight. Laughing emoji, nature's courier. I don't know why, but the forces in the land of Rahu don't seem to have any intention of attacking Beiki. I have to shave my head and cause trouble every day. If everyone decides to fight, I'm ready to leave the 9 luminaries and go to the sea to cause trouble. Roasting_jade_hair_while_hugging_cha. I wanted to be a pirate when shipbuilding was first started, but I was too weak back then. Plundering sea merchants was not realistic at all. Now that I can do it, isn't it better to just plunder? Laughing emoji, pirate_Juan_Sofe. I used to be a sea merchant, but I didn't have enough capital. I couldn't do it at all. Only the big guilds have the capital to do it. Being a pirate is good. Everyone can do it. It's a business with no capital and huge profits. You can live happily for a long time after doing it. Howling roaring. JPG, Hazala. I strongly request for official support. Open up a plundering system and create a plundering leaderboard. If you want to do it, make it big. Sea merchants are all leaks in the future. Navy Admiral. How should I put this? Look at my name. If I say no, will you guys beat me up? Navy Vice Admiral replied to Navy Admiral, Brother, let's shake hands. But I'm going to be a pirate. Please call me a traitor. Laughing emoji. InShiaochi_is_royal_sister. It's doable. Although the consequences might be terrible, this is what makes it exciting. Also, Battle Guild is recruiting only super elites. Laughing emoji. Crayon_Shintan. Tisk, TSK. Isn't fishing fun? Everyone likes fighting and killing. Tonggua's disgusted. JPG. After Guyu's post was published, the players were discussing it. However, most of the players agreed to open up the pirate mode. In the end, Guyu initiated a round of voting in the forum. 92% of the players agreed, 7% of them agreed, and 1% of them objected. The reason for the 1% of the players who objected was they don't have a ship. It's too embarrassing to be pirates on a raft. If the pirate mode was really opened up, the reputation of the players in the sea trade would be affected. However, it was just like what a player in the forum had said. Not everyone could do the sea trade. Without a strong guild's strength and financial support, it was not feasible. However, the pirate mode was different. It was a business without capital. It was more suitable for the players who grew up by plundering. It could be said that the pirate mode was beneficial to all the players. After the final results were out, the players were ready to open up the pirate mode. At the same time, they began to call for the official to create a pirate mode function as soon as possible, adding some rewards or a leaderboard mechanism for plundering. After seeing the voting results, the Myth Guild and the Demolition Guild, who had been improving in the sea trade, were the first to speak up. They expressed that they would give up all the sea trade and reform into the Myth Pirate Group and the Demolition Guild Pirate Group. Under the call of the two, the players became excited. After all, the sea trade was too boring for most of the players. It was not as exciting as being a pirate. The craze of being a pirate in the forum quickly spread to the European server. As the land of Tsongshu, which was also close to the Void Ocean, the players of the European server could not sit still anymore. They all expressed that they wanted to get rich together. Therefore, the players of the European server also began to form their pirate groups. They were ready to follow the original server and do something big. Chapter 497. Smoke Dragon would never have thought that his overbearing behavior had already incurred the displeasure of the biggest gang leader in the Void Ocean and the Quelong Ocean, the Player Clan. The players couldn't wait to teach him a lesson, although they were usually in conflict with each other. At this moment, the players were united against a common enemy. All maritime trade ceased after this, and the players began to actively form pirate groups. During this period, many small guilds had even chosen to merge with other guilds to strengthen themselves and reap the bountiful benefits from the upcoming plundering. Not only the original server, but the European server's pirate groups also quickly followed suit, intending to get a share of the loot from this battle. After playing Conquest for so long, the veteran players were well aware of how much resources and profits were on each of the ships of the sea merchants. Now that the decision was made, the players were ready to do something big. Moreover, with their current strength, it was not a big problem for them to plunder the sea merchants that traveled between the two seas. The players had collected information about the sea merchants. He knew that not all sea merchants were very powerful. This was just like the cuttlefish sea merchant that Xiao Tian had killed back then. As a core member of the Western Continent Chamber of Commerce, he had actually been easily killed by Xiao Tian. From this, it could be seen that the difference in strength between the sea merchants was enormous. The only reason these weak merchants dared to do business in the dangerous sea region was because they had the support of the Underworld Chamber of Commerce Alliance. Xiao Tian had killed the merchant cuttlefish because of the Son of the Sea. Because of that, the Sea King had to compensate the Western Continent Chamber of Commerce with a large amount of resources. Only then was the matter suppressed. But it was not because the Sea King was afraid of the Western Continent Chamber of Commerce that he made the compensation. As the overlord of the Void Ocean in the past, even 10 Western Continent Chambers of Commerce were no match for him. The only thing that could make the Sea King feel fear was the Underworld Chamber of Commerce, which was behind the Western Continent Chamber of Commerce. This was also the main reason why the Sea King had chosen to compensate a large amount of resources to appease the Western Continent Chamber of Commerce's anger. However, for the players, since they had started, they didn't care about the Netherworld Merchant Guild. They would rob it all the same. In the forum, the calls for a new mode were getting louder and louder. Of course, Lu Wu was aware of all this. After some consideration, he decided to let Bailey set the settings for the new mode. From Lu Wu's point of view, the most suitable way for the players to grow was through plundering. Under such a model, the players would grow at the fastest speed. This was also the fastest way for him to earn soul coins, since it was the sea merchants who had initiated the provocation. He would take this opportunity to let the players join in while he added fuel to the fire behind the scenes. Now that the players had settled down for too long, Lu Wu felt that it was indeed time to start nurturing war through war. He wanted the players to unsheath their natural disasters and show their prowess. Once again, it entered rapid growth mode. One day later, amidst the anticipation of the players, an announcement was heard in the local server and the European server. Server-wide announcement. The new mode One Piece system is officially launched. One Piece mode details. The latest mode added to the function panel. Players must register as a guild to participate. One Piece pirate group can accommodate up to 10 guilds to form a pirate group alliance. Pirate group mode specific functions. 1. Point ranking mode. Points will be calculated for every plunder campaign launched against the sea merchants, and the total score will be added to the One Piece leaderboard. The ranking will be calculated once a month, and rewards will be given according to the ranking. Notes on how to obtain points. Method of killing enemies' points. In the plundering war against the sea merchants, the stronger and more enemies are killed, the more points are obtained. Method of plundering materials points. The higher the quality and quantity of the plundering materials, the more points are obtained. Method of personal points. After every plunder war, all participating players will obtain contribution points. Contribution points are personal points and have nothing to do with the total points of the pirate group. 2. One Piece system shop system. Members of the pirate group can choose to consume personal contribution points to redeem ghost ship or ghost ship in the One Piece shop, such as Breaking Dawn Ram, accessory, Sea Shield accessory, and other items. The core members of the pirate group, 10 people, can use the total points of the pirate group to redeem collective enhancement items, such as pirate flag, all enhancement pendants, pirate hull paint, array, all enhancement, pirate uniform, clothing, decoration, sea companion growth, and other props. 3. Pirate group rating system. All pirate group will enter the rating system after their official establishment. The details are as follows. Level 1 pirate group. New plunder. Total points required to upgrade is 50,000. Level 2 pirate group. Sea Tiger. Total points required to upgrade is 100,000. 3 realms pirate group. Sea Dragon. Total points required to upgrade is 300,000. Level 4 pirate group. King of the Sea. Total points required to upgrade is 1 million. Level 5 pirate group. For Emperors of the Sea, the top 4 pirate groups in the server with a total points of more than 5 million can be selected. Level 6 pirate group. The Arrogant 4 Seas, first place in the overall points ranking of the 4 servers, and the total points of the pirate group is more than 50 million. After the pirate group is upgraded, all members of the group will receive generous contribution points, rewards, and items. In this rating system, Lu Wu opened a new shop interface in order to encourage the growth of the players. He even set up a guild alliance mode, which gave the small guilds a chance to rise. At the same time, every time the pirate group was upgraded, Lu Wu set up a very generous reward. This was also the reward he gave to encourage the players to strive for personal points and for the growth of the pirate group. There were all kinds of rich rewards. At this moment, the enthusiasm in the hearts of the players was instantly aroused. Both the big and small guilds began to look for an alliance. They all wanted to do something big in the new era of maritime plunder. At this moment, the forum was even more lively. The buy-in Pirates has been officially established. We're looking for capable teammates. The existing guilds are as follows. Noxus, 534 members. 9 Heaven Thunder, 423 members. Bald Cape Man, 213 members. We're looking for guilds with more than 200 members. You will be rich soon. Come and join us. A newbie is looking for a pirate group guild. We already have a level 7 Spectre ship. It's a disaster growth mode. We're looking for a pirate fleet to take us in. We're looking for casual players. The Viper Pirates has been officially established. We have more than 1,000 members. We're looking for an alliance guild. We want to cooperate with more than 1,000 members because we only want to be the strongest. Tonggua's arrogant face. QVQ, our guild only has 50 members. They are all girls. Their combat power is not strong. We used to be fans of scenery and life skills. After a discussion today, we suddenly want to join as pirates to experience a new life. Do you want to take us in? Don't worry, the girls in the guild can eat a lot. Did you guys notice that there are hull modification blueprints and upgrade parts for sale in the One Piece market? Doesn't this mean that apart from devouring growth, there is a new growth mode for ship maintenance? As a ship maintenance enthusiast, it looks like I'm going to join as a pirate. Laughing emoji. I don't need to pay to maintain a ship. I have already bought 8 kidneys. I'm plundering points 24 hours a day. Now, can you tell me where I can buy rum? Laughing emoji. Speaking of which, isn't there an island in the Void Ocean that belongs to the West Continent's Chamber of Commerce? What do you guys think? Doggy Cavalier charge. JPG. After the full server announcement, the players began to recruit members in the forum in order to form a pirate group as soon as possible. At this moment, the players' arrogance reappeared. They were all ready to go all out. During the recruitment period, the players also began to modify their own warships. Since there were no points to spend in the shop, they could only do it themselves if they wanted to unify the warships and ship images in the pirate group. Of course, there was never a lack of experts in this area among the players. At this time, the modification was in full swing along the Lili coast. Some hung ferocious skull flags, while others painted various ferocious beasts on the hull. Of course, there were also members of the adorable guild who dressed up in pink pirate ships. Although they did not look threatening or lethal, they looked very happy. Of course, among the fancy decorations, the most eye-catching one was the demonic god worship of the Demonic God Guild. A group of Chinibu teenagers actually spent soul coins to hire someone to erect a tall statue of the demonic god on the worship. It was full of Chinibu aura. At the same time, in the strategy section of the forum, the previously collected maps of the sea and the distribution of forces also came in handy. The first target of the players was the trading island of the West Continent's Chamber of Commerce in the Void Ocean. This West Continent's Chamber of Commerce had once made the Sea King suffer. This time, the players were ready to punish them with a natural disaster. As one of the gathering places for professional players, the strategy section played a great role this time. Not only had the detailed map of the West Continent's islands been produced, but the West Continent's Chamber of Commerce's sea trade routes were also clearly identified. The professional players in the strategy section used their foresight to teach the players in the forum a good lesson about what it meant to prepare for a rainy day. While the players were cheering the professional players in the strategy section, they downloaded the West Continent's Chamber of Commerce's trade route map from the forum without hesitation. After all, these route maps were very useful to them. Without the trade route map, it would be easy for the players to not even find the target to plunder in the vast Void Ocean. After these preparations were completed, the next step was to purchase materials and upgrade warships and ships. During this period, the price of spiritual materials in the shop also increased slightly because the upgrade of warships had become popular again. At this stage, whether it was the Spectre warship or the Spectre ship, they could only devour and evolve. Although the pirate shop was now open, the players still did not have enough points to purchase equipment, ships, and accessories to enhance their combat power. This caused the price of spiritual materials to rise again. The players were happy with the opening of the new function, but Lu Wu was even happier. Many players were reluctant to spend soul coins and liked to hoard soul coins. But this time, the soul coins in their hands flowed out again. The opening of the new function turned the soul coins in the players' hands into combat power, and their strength was significantly enhanced. On the other hand, Lu Wu received a large amount of soul coins as tax from the handling fees. In just one day, pirate groups kept popping up like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. The next morning, There were already pirate groups sailing out to sea. This time, the players formed their own pirate groups. The densely packed steel warships departed from the Lioli coast and sailed towards the void ocean in the face of the rising sun. At the same time, the European server players who were peeking at the forum also chose to sail out to sea after learning about the situation. They were ready to freeload on the plundering benefits. This time, there was only one thought in the minds of all the players. Make trouble, make trouble, make trouble, get rich, get rich, get rich. Chapter 498. The Void Ocean. Under the gloomy sky, raindrops fell densely. Under the strong wind, huge waves rolled up on the surface of the sea. In such bad weather, 8 dark green merchant ships were breaking through the waves. On the tall masts hung the Water Lion flag that belonged to the Western Continent Chamber of Commerce, fluttering in the wind. The anchor, which was connected to the long iron chain, collided with the hull of the ship from time to time, producing dull sounds. Even if the waves were crashing and the gales were blowing, the 8 merchant ships were still as steady as a rock. No matter how strong the wind and the waves were, they didn't budge. The bottom of the boat that came into contact with the surface of the sea rippled and radiated in all directions. It was firmly connected to the surface of the water and steadily moved forward in the raging waves. On the deck of the leading warship, an old man dressed in the clothes of an elder of the Western Continent Chamber of Commerce stroked his long beard as he looked at the surging sea. He seemed to be in a daze. As neighbors, how could they not know about the plundering incident that happened in the Kowloon Ocean recently? Their trip to the Kowloon Ocean this time was to transport supplies for the Smoke Dragon Trade Association. As one of the subordinate merchant guilds of the Underworld Merchant Guild Alliance, they were protected by the Underworld Merchant Guild and had to pay a huge protection fee every year. At the same time, after joining the Underworld Merchant Guild, they were also obligated to provide material support to the warring merchant groups. On the list of chambers of commerce that needed to provide material support, their Western Continent Chamber of Commerce was impressively on it. There were a total of 8 ships. 1 was loaded with sea snake wine, 2 were loaded with food, and the rest were loaded with spirit materials. The first 2 didn't matter, but 5 merchant ships filled with spiritual materials. Even the Western Continent's Chamber of Commerce, with a rich foundation, felt the pinch. Originally, they only needed to provide 1 ship of wine, 2 ships of food, and 1 ship of spirit materials as a guarantee. But just yesterday, a member of the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association personally came and told them that they wanted 4 ships of spiritual materials. This undoubtedly made the upper echelons of the Western Continent Chamber of Commerce angry. This was clearly breaking the rules of material support, demanding an exorbitant price. For this reason, the higher-ups of the West Continent Chamber of Commerce held a special meeting to decide if they should send this batch of resources to the Kowloon Ocean. They had 2 choices. One was to report the Smoke Dragon Trade Union's actions to the Netherworld Trade Union's headquarters and let them punish the Smoke Dragon Trade Union for their excessive actions. The second was to swallow the insult and choose to bear with it. According to what the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association said, they would provide 4 ships of spiritual materials, but the higher-ups of the Western Continent Commerce did not dare gamble. As a war merchant, the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association was one of the core merchant associations of the Netherworld Merchant Association Alliance. They also did not know if the Smoke Dragon Merchant Guild had anyone in the upper echelons of the Underworld Merchant Guild, so they could not afford to gamble. If they failed, then the Western Continent Merchant Guild's fate would definitely be extremely miserable. The Underworld Merchant Guild gave them the protection to trade in the neighboring seas without being plundered, but in reality, the internal structure was also very complicated. A medium-sized merchant guild like theirs had no authority in the internal structure. Even though they had transported 4 ships of spirit materials this time, the upper echelons of the Western Continent Chamber of Commerce were still somewhat worried. They were afraid that the greedy Smoke Dragon Merchant Association would make other excessive demands and rely on their strength to exploit their Western Continent Merchant Association step by step. But they had no other choice. This time, the Elder personally led the team and brought an extra ship of spiritual materials. They were also going to Black Reef Island to sound out the situation there, and even try to curry favor with the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce. Since there was no way to resist an expert, the only way was to curry favor with him. As sea merchants, they did not need integrity. They only needed profits and survival. The storm today was very heavy. The deep seabed was like a giant beast from the abyss, spying on everyone on the ship. Kacha! A bolt of lightning struck down, causing a huge wave on the surface of the water. Then, a whirlpool formed on the surface of the water and slowly began to expand. Seeing this scene, the Western Continent Chamber of Commerce's elder's face was as calm as an ancient well. He did not even give any orders and just let the merchant ship go straight towards the whirlpool. The moment the whirlpool and the ship came into contact, the hull of the ship let out a dull sound of metal clashing. Then, a gap slowly opened at the bow of the ship and a bronze ram appeared. Boom! A purple slurry of energy suddenly appeared from the ram and smashed into the whirlpool. The sea instantly pressed down, completely disrupting the newly formed whirlpool. The waves that were set off immediately fell towards the deck of the merchant ship. At this moment, a dark green protective layer suddenly formed above the hull of the ship, bouncing all the waves away. The underworld sea was filled with danger. To Mo Lang, this scene was just a small matter. Shaking his head, he cast his gaze towards the front that was covered by the rolling dark clouds. At this moment, he suddenly noticed that there seemed to be countless black spots appearing in the distance. He immediately took out the telescope device from his pocket and began to check. It was indeed a fleet. No, it should be several fleets. From the arrangement of these warships and ships, it could be seen that they did not seem to be from the same group. What puzzled Mo Lang was that this fleet seemed to be sailing straight towards him. He was not afraid of being robbed. After all, the Smoke Dragon Trade Association was now in the Kowloon Ocean. No one would dare to cause trouble in the nearby waters. Moreover, they knew that there were no raiding groups in the Void Ocean at all. But somehow he felt a little uneasy. In the distance, a few waves of player pirate groups that were coming along the transportation route were secretly competing with each other and moving forward at a faster speed. One of the pirate groups that was dressed up extremely flashily was on the leading demonic god worship. Fatty wiped the rain off his face and looked at the man standing at the bow of the ship. Boss, this rain is too heavy. Remember to upgrade the warship's rain shield next time. Upon hearing that, and Shang also wiped the rain off his face and said, "Who said we need a rain shield?" Who was the one who said that we don't need rain shields? That's for sissy warships. What our demonic god worship needs is the wild energy that comes into contact with nature. After wiping the rain off his face again, Fatty had a constipated expression on his face. Maybe nature is too wild this time. It's a little too much for me. This warship was the treasure of the demonic god society. However, they never leveled up according to the forum's guide. They leveled up whatever they liked. They suffered a lot during the leveling process. For example, they vomited for a whole day when they gave up on the stability. However, the members of the demonic god society never regretted it. If one had to ask why, it was because they were young and stubborn. Stop talking. There's a target in front. I wonder if they are sea merchants. Achi, who was at the side, said. Upon hearing that, and Shang immediately raised the telescope in his hand and began to aim ahead. After checking, and Shang quickly opened the photo album function and selected a picture to enlarge. There was a flag in the picture. On the flag was a blue water lion roaring with its head raised. Seeing this scene, and Shang was extremely excited. Damn, it's the Western Continent Trade Association. The big fish is here. The strategic transportation route map is really awesome. Boss, do you want to say it in the regional voice chat? Fatty asked. Go ahead. Let's move as a group. Without them, we probably won't be able to take down these 8 ships. Sure. Fatty grinned. Immediately, Fatty's roar sounded in the voice chat. Pay attention, everyone. There's a merchant ship from the Western Continent Trade Association ahead. The target is right in front of us. It's the same transportation route marked on the map. Due to the stormy weather, visibility was poor. Upon hearing this, all the players nearby were shocked. They hurriedly went to the bow of the ship and began to observe. As they got closer and closer, after confirming that the target was the Western Continent Trade Association's merchant ship, the smiles on the players' faces gradually became more and more perverted. Although they came according to the transportation route map provided by the strategic section, they didn't think they would definitely encounter a merchant ship. After all, there wouldn't be a merchant ship passing through the route they chose at all times. However, they didn't expect their luck to be so good as to encounter one just like that. As the distance between the two sides shortened, the players' shouts rang out in the voice chat channel. Following that, black flags were raised one after another. On the flags were pictures of ferocious exotic beasts drawn by the players themselves to indicate their identity. Mo Lang, who saw this scene from afar, couldn't help but be stunned. What surprised him even more was that, even though they could already see each other, several fleets were still heading towards them. At this moment, Mo Lang realized that something was wrong. He hurriedly turned his head and said to his subordinate, standing behind him, "Quickly reveal your identity." When the subordinate heard this, he immediately came to the mast and pulled the rope. Suddenly, the water lion on the flag seemed to come to life. It turned into a giant blue lion and let out a loud roar towards the front. The water lion flag and the water lion ship spirit were the symbols of the Western Continent Trade Association. Mo Lang believed that the other party would obediently give way after knowing their identity. But this time he was obviously wrong. Not only did the players' pirate fleet not retreat, but they also accelerated and approached. When the distance between the two sides was less than a nautical mile, the players did not hesitate and decisively summoned the warship spirit. Roar! The roar of the giant beast was deafening, rising and falling. Looking from afar, illusory spiritual monsters appeared one after another. Under the indistinct contrast of lightning and dark clouds, it was full of a sense of oppression. Amidst the howling wind, the appearance of the players' legion shocked Mo Lang. He had already realized that he had encountered a group of marauders. Under the rule of the Sea King, there had never been a marauder in the Void Ocean. Even after the end of the Sea King's rule, the Void Ocean was still very peaceful. Mo Lang couldn't imagine that a group of marauders would appear during the safest period when the Smoke Dragon came to investigate the incident. It was unbelievable. Weren't they afraid of death? The distance between the two sides was getting closer and closer. At this moment, Mo Lang had already shouted in the opposite direction. However, due to the stormy weather and the direction against the wind, the players' fleet was already close by when the ship turned around. At this moment, the players could already clearly see the members of the Western Continent Trade Association standing on the deck. Yeah, brother, that's not how the pirates shout. That's Tarzan of the Apes. Then how do the pirates shout? You need a one-eyed mask and make a fierce expression. It's best if you hold a bottle of rum in your hand. That's the perfect image. That's too complicated. Just rob them. On the leading demonic god worship, and Shang, Fatty, and the others pulled the rope excitedly. Boss, will it work? I've seen it in the movies. We'll just swing over like this and jump onto their ship. That's definitely the right choice. At this moment, their demonic god worship brushed shoulders with a merchant ship, and Shang immediately shouted, "Jump!" Instantly, the youths of the demonic god society leaped up and swung toward the merchant ship by relying on the rope hanging on the mast. Obviously, there was a huge difference between reality and the movies. A dark green barrier suddenly appeared on the merchant ship, and the members of the demonic god society were instantly bounced off. Their bodies were thrown far away, and without exception, all of them fell into the water. The demonic god society was annihilated. Chapter 499. Although they had always wanted to strengthen the demonic god guild and make it rise again, the demonic god guild had always been shameful ever since the server started. This time was no exception. Their idea was not bad. They would swing over by the ropes on the mast and start the next battle. However, the problem was that the merchant ships in this world were all protected by protective shields. There was no such thing as a next battle in the sea. Therefore, the demonic god guild's demonic god guild were defeated again. They were eliminated right at the beginning. The demonic god guild's demonic god guild had always been very good at embarrassing themselves. At this moment, even M.O. Lang, who was standing on the leading merchant ship, could not help but be stunned. When he saw countless ship spirits bearing their fangs and brandishing their claws, he was very anxious. However, at this moment, the fear in his heart was suddenly washed away. At this moment, a large number of players' warships approached from behind. Seeing this, M.O. Lang immediately turned around and roared, "Turn around quickly! Also, release a messenger bird and send back the news that we've encountered a pirate ship." M.O. Lang knew that it was impossible to negotiate with the sudden enemy attack. He had already revealed his identity as a member of the West Continent Trade Union. Since the other party still dared to attack, it meant that they were coming for them. At this moment, he was extremely nervous. The resources on the ship were all requested by Smoke Dragon. If they were lost, although the Underworld Trade Union would send the War Trade Union to deal with them, they would still have to give another batch of resources to the Smoke Dragon Trade Union. At this moment, the players' fleet was gradually approaching. Naturally, the players behind were not as reckless as the demonic god guild's demonic god guild. They directly controlled the ship and rammed it into the merchant ship. Boom! The first warship collided with M.O. Lang's warship. Instantly, the dragon horn of the player's warship was broken. However, at this moment, the giant 8-tentacled beast above the warship waved its tentacles and firmly fixed M.O. Lang's merchant ship on the spot. The dark green protective shield appeared again, but the giant 8-tentacled beast was still tightly wrapped around the ship, preventing it from retreating. As the players' warships arrived, M.O. Lang's merchant ship was completely surrounded. Fire! Countless sorcerers turned into water cannons and swept the merchant ship's protective shield with their beautiful skills, causing countless waves on it. Under such circumstances, M.O. Lang was extremely anxious. Although he had already released the signal bird, he felt that he would not be able to last until reinforcements arrived. As the barrier of the merchant ship dimmed, a crack suddenly appeared. Kacha! In an instant, the protective barrier on the surface of the merchant ship shattered into countless white lights that fell like raindrops. At this moment, the eyes of the players instantly turned red. They were blinded by the points, soul coins, and experience in front of them. One after another, the player battleships crashed into the merchant ship that M.O. Lang was on, creating large holes in the ship's hull. A large amount of seawater poured in. Under such circumstances, other than being anxious, M.O. Lang did not know what to do. His own strength had barely reached the level of a ghost commander. In the face of such a large-scale attack, he felt that he was useless. Under the thunderous clouds, the players continued to attack. After completely surrounding the 8 merchant ships, the players started the first wave of punishment with overwhelming numbers and strength. As the protective shields of the merchant ships were broken, the seawater sank the merchant ships one by one. At this time, the players suddenly jumped into the sea like crazy. At this moment, a large number of wooden barrels were floating on the surface of the sea. There was wine, food, and even spirit materials. How could the players not be envious of these resources? The final harvest was the harvest of resources. At this moment, all the players had the same thought. Plundering was such a goddamn profit. It was simply a windfall of riches. thinking of how they wanted to learn from the sea merchants to earn money. The players felt that they were too weak. At this moment, Mo Lang wanted to cry, but had no tears. He carried a barrel of spirit materials and floated on the surface of the water. Looking at the players who were plundering resources, he clenched his teeth in anger. Be **starred. Put down the barrel in your hand. At this time, a few players swam toward Mo Lang. Mo Lang's face turned pale when he saw that. However, he still decisively abandoned the barrel, dived into the water, and snuck toward the direction of the Kowloon Ocean. These players did not choose to continue chasing after him. After all, compared to Mo Lang, resources were obviously more important. From the moment they discovered each other to the end of the battle, it only took half an hour. However, under the attack of the players, the merchant ship led by Mo Lang could not withstand such a fierce attack at all. All the resources were plundered by the players. After a while, the cheers of the players resounded in the sea. Pictures of people hugging wooden barrels filled with spiritual materials, as well as pictures of people holding wooden barrels and drinking wine, were posted on the forum. They immediately aroused the envy of countless players and aroused their passion. The players' first sanction against the sea merchants was a complete victory. A day later, on the Black Reef Island, Yen Long looked at Mo Lang, the elder of the West Continent's Chamber of Commerce, standing in front of him. His expression was extremely ugly. Is everything you said true? Mo Lang's body trembled when he heard that. President Yen Long, everything I said is true. Moreover, I know which force robbed us. Speak. The player clan is a new force that appeared in the Void Ocean in recent years. Their strength is not to be underestimated. Back then, the Sea King was defeated by them. Mo Lang quickly answered. The Sea King? You mean the king of the Mu-Te Sea Nation in the Kowloon Ocean? Yen Long was shocked. That's right. Before the Mu-Te Sea Nation was established, he was the overlord of the Void Ocean. It was because of the battle with the player clan that he was forced to leave the Void Ocean and settle down in the Kowloon Ocean. Mo Lang immediately nodded. Hearing this, the smoke dragon nodded. I'll settle this. You just need to go back and prepare the resources. Next time, I'll personally send someone to escort you. As for the player clan, I'll make them pay. When Mo Lang heard this, although he was resentful, he still hurriedly nodded. In fact, the Western Continent Commerce Guild had been in contact with the player clan many times. At that time, the player clan did not have any malicious intent towards them. Hence, the Western Continent Commerce Guild always thought that the Void Ocean had only changed its ruler. However, to them, who were protected by the Acheron Chamber of Commerce, it did not matter. No matter who the ruler was, they would not be threatened. However, the player clan's attack this time really frightened the Western Continent Commerce Guild. Since the player clan had chosen to wage war against them, it was obvious that they no longer cared about the Acheron Chamber of Commerce behind them. At this moment, the Western Continent Commerce Guild only wanted the player clan to be eliminated as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be difficult for them to move an inch in the Void Ocean. However, since Yen Long had made a promise, the pressure in Mo Lang's heart was instantly reduced. He bowed slightly to show his respect and turned to leave. After Mo Lang left, Yen Long frowned and asked his subordinate, standing at the side, Is there any information about the player clan among the information you brought? The subordinate, who was in charge of sorting out the information, immediately nodded. President, the player clan only appeared recently. It seems that they are a force on land in the direction of Baiki. They have only officially joined the Battle of the Sea in recent years. By the way, the force that you killed during the meeting the other day was the player clan. Oh! At the thought of the player clan, Yen Long suddenly thought of the uniform, turn, and middle finger. His face could not help but turn pale. So, the reason why the player clan robbed the Western Continent Commerce Guild is because of me? Previously, the Western Continent Commerce Guild did not have any battle with the player clan in the Void Ocean, so there is a high probability that it is related to this. They are courting death." Yanlong's eyes flashed with ferocity. To him, this kind of revenge was not painful at all. However, since the player clan dared to provoke the Smoke Dragon Commerce Guild, he naturally would not let them off easily. Thinking of this, Yanlong said in a deep voice, "Send the first team to escort the next batch of supplies from the Western Continent Commerce Guild. Then, mobilize the second, third, fourth, and fifth teams to search for the player clan in the Kuelung Ocean and the Void Ocean. Eliminate all of them as long as they are found." "Yes," the subordinate immediately answered and then turned to leave. At this moment, a smile appeared on Yanlong's face again. He was waiting for the moment when the player clan would personally come to beg for mercy. Soon, the news of the Smoke Dragon Commerce Guild declaring war on the player clan spread like wildfire in the Kuelung Ocean. All the major forces received the news. During this period, some were happy while others were sad. The happiest was none other than the allied forces of Lengia Island. As enemies, they were equally troubled by the player clan. This time, the fact that the player clan had offended the Smoke Dragon Commerce Guild was definitely good news for them. Now that the Smoke Dragon Commerce Guild was personally involved, they believed that the player clan was not far from being annihilated. On the other hand, the forces that were on good terms with the player clan were worried. They usually relied on the player clan's transportation to obtain resources at a cheaper price than the Commerce Guild. In their eyes, the player clan's current situation was not optimistic at all. Of course, there were also those who were extremely calm. The Sea King was the typical example. From the Sea King's point of view, it was easy to defeat the player clan with just the few fleets of the Smoke Dragon Commerce Guild. However, the possibility of defeating the player clan was extremely low. Back when he was dominating the Void Ocean, he had also waged war with the player clan. Similarly, he had sent out countless elite naval forces to sink the player clan's warships that they encountered in the ocean. However, the result was that he was defeated. The Sea King was full of anticipation for this battle. He wanted to see if the player clan could create another miracle and defeat the Smoke Dragon Commerce Guild that was far more powerful than them. After the players heard the news, they appeared extremely calm. They even felt like laughing. From their point of view, everyone knew how to talk tough. Didn't Cha Na say that he wanted to destroy us? Now he has been refined and is following the Great Demon King to conquer the European server. Didn't the Rock Ghost King and the Hydra King say that they wanted to destroy us? Now they are living a life of retirement in the Mansion of the Dead, playing cards, drinking tea, and refining pills every day. Didn't the Lord of Shao Tian Island say that he wanted to destroy us? Now he is doing odd jobs for Tonghua in the Mansion of the Dead. He was forced to learn forging and was forced to accept the inheritance of forging in order to share Tonggua's pain. Also, the 9 Yao brothers always said that they would take down Beiki in a few days. Then they did it for a few days. Half a year later, they wiped out Beiki again and again. Grass must be growing on their graves by now. Among the hostile forces that talked tough to the players, the Sea King was the only one who persisted until the end. Although his subordinates, the Sea King Navy and his eldest brother, Mu Zhiguang, were destroyed, and he was living a miserable life, he was still struggling to grow. Now he had turned the tables and rebuilt the Mu Taisi nation. Therefore, the players were extremely calm in the face of the Smoke Dragon's threats. Some players who were even more outrageous had already started betting with soul coins on the forum, betting on when the Smoke Dragon clan would be destroyed. At the same time, the players were also ready to continue the sanctions. They wanted to show the forces of the Void Ocean and the Kuelung Ocean how tough the player clan was. We, the player clan, will lose if we don't kill the Smoke Dragon clan until the end. Chapter 500. The sea battle began in the next few days. The players' pirate army attacked the Void and Kuelung Ocean. This time, their main target was all the sea merchants, especially the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association. For this reason, the Empress, the Navy commander, was also invited by the players. In the form of paying soul coins for employment, he participated in this sea battle and personally commanded the players' pirate regiment in the battle. She even set up a battle command center for this. At this stage, the players were very enthusiastic, with many successful plundering and great harvest photos posted on the forum. The popularity of the sea battle continued to rise. The competition between the players on the one-piece total points leaderboard gradually intensified. At the west of Baeki, the Rahu clan, who occupied the land of the 9 luminaries, had no intention of waging war against Baeki. Hence, the players had nothing to worry about and were fully immersed in the plundering war. The strategy section of the forum became the core communication platform for this war. At the same time, the European server players also officially joined the war. Countless fleets of the European server followed the original players into the Void Ocean and began the plundering war, just like the original players. After a few successful plundering and harvesting a huge amount of resources, the European server players went crazy. At this moment, they finally understood that the original forum was not joking when they said that plundering merchant ships could make them rich overnight. The original players were dissatisfied with this. After all, there were only so many merchant ships traveling between the Void Ocean and the Kuelong Ocean. The European server players were plundering their resources by doing this. However, in the few battles with the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association's fleet, the original players did not expect that the European server forces would take the initiative to help. According to a few big guilds of the European server, the internal strife of the players was one thing, but they would unite against the foreign enemies. At this moment, the original players also put aside their prejudices and chose to cooperate with the European server players. While plundering, their main goal was to attack the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association. For this reason, the original players also showed their sincerity and shared many of the maps in the internal group of the strategy section. Since the last expedition of the European server, the players of the 2 big servers, who were usually at odds with each other, chose to cooperate again in the face of interests and foreign enemies. With the help of the European server's fleet, the players' morale was high, and the sanctions against the merchant guilds became more aggressive. In addition to the Western Continent Merchant Association, many merchant ships that came to the Void Ocean from the outer sea were punished on the spot. In just a few days, the players plundered a total of 89 merchant ships. The huge amount of spiritual materials they obtained made the players go crazy. At the same time, Smoke Dragon, who was on the Black Reef Island, was furious. At this moment, he looked at the intelligence compiled by his subordinates with an ugly expression. It's only been 5 days? 89 merchant ships have been robbed. Are you telling me this is true? Smoke Dragon suppressed his anger and said in a low voice while looking at his subordinate, who was collecting the information, "President, the news is true. There are already 8 chambers of commerce asking for help." The intelligence officer replied in a low voice with a timid expression. The intelligence says that the player clan lost over 5,700 warships. Is this information accurate? Smoke Dragon asked again with a livid expression. Guild Commander, Dragon. King Dragon, Commander, Dragon, Dragon, Yen, Smoke. Dragon, Guild members. Bang! Upon hearing this, Smoke Dragon slammed his palm on the conference table. We've lost more than 5,700 warships. Why hasn't their plundering been stopped? Instead, it's becoming more and more intense. Tell me why. How many warships does the player clan have? Smoke Dragon glared at the intelligence officer and asked, This, I don't know. After all, the player clan's power is based on the land. I have no useful information about their specific strength. Looking at Smoke Dragon's increasingly cold eyes, the intelligence quickly said, President, I know someone who knows the player clan very well. You can find out everything you want from him. Who? The monarch of the Mute Kingdom. Upon hearing this, Smoke Dragon's expression froze. He suddenly remembered that the elder of the Western Continent Merchant Association had told him that the Sea King had a sea war with the player clan. Smoke Dragon took a deep breath and said, "Call him here. Tell him that I'm looking for him personally." "I'll go now." The intelligence replied immediately. Smoke Dragon pressed his temples and waved his hand, signaling for the intelligence to leave. Now that 8 merchant associations had asked him for help, Smoke Dragon also felt great pressure. Naturally, this pressure did not come from the 8 merchant associations, but from the Underworld Merchant Alliance. If he couldn't handle it properly, the 8 merchant associations would naturally choose to report to the Underworld Merchant Alliance. By then, the Underworld Merchant Alliance's higher-ups would definitely put pressure on him. Although the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association he led was a core merchant association in the Underworld Merchant Alliance, it still couldn't compare to the high-ranking merchant associations with great power and strength. This was because the Underworld Merchant Alliance's higher-ups were all forces in the central sea of the Underworld. To be able to stand in the central sea of the Underworld where there were many powerful clans and gods, Smoke Dragon knew very well how terrifying these higher-ups were. Although the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association he led was called the War Merchant Association, in fact, it was just a force that the higher-ups of the Underworld Merchant Alliance didn't want to do things themselves. If he couldn't do things well, he could be deprived of the authority of the War Merchant Association at any time. This was unacceptable to Smoke Dragon. The reason why the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association could develop so quickly was because of the War Merchant Association's name. They collected high protection fees from sea merchants in the major sea regions. Without this authority, the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association would only be a marine force. Thinking of this, Smoke Dragon's eyes glowed fiercely. He hated the player clan even more. After waiting for half a day, the Sea King finally arrived. Under the guidance of the intelligence personnel, he entered the conference room inside Black Reef Island and saw Smoke Dragon waiting for him. "Sit." Smoke Dragon, who was resting with his eyes closed, opened his eyes and looked at the Sea King. Hearing this, the Sea King nodded and sat opposite Smoke Dragon. "I heard that you know a lot about the player clan." Smoke Dragon asked. "Not really, but I've been in contact with them for a long time," the Sea King said. At this time, he had already guessed why Smoke Dragon wanted to see him. Obviously, Smoke Dragon was now experiencing the bitterness he went through back then. "Tell me what you know about the player clan. By the way, how strong is the player clan?" Smoke Dragon stared at the Sea King and asked again. Hearing this, the Sea King couldn't help but laugh. In terms of strength, they aren't very strong. However, their unique characteristic is that they are fearless and extremely vengeful. Logically speaking, without absolute strength to match, they would have been destroyed a long time ago. However, until now, they are still around and getting stronger. Why is that? Smoke Dragon couldn't help but frown. If I knew the reason, I wouldn't have been defeated. President Smoke Dragon, I can only say that you shouldn't have attacked the player clan impulsively. They have always been vengeful. If the Smoke Dragon Trade Union isn't destroyed, they won't let it go, the Sea King said with a smile. Bam! Hearing this, Smoke Dragon's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He raised his hand and slammed it on the conference table. Suddenly, the entire conference table turned into powder under the violent force and fell down. Destroy my Smoke Dragon Trade Union just by relying on the player clan. At this moment, Smoke Dragon looked at the Sea King with murderous intent. President Smoke Dragon, since you want to know the information, I'm just telling you what I know. Why are you so angry? The Sea King was still smiling. Monarch of Mute Monarch, the player clan can drive you out of the Void Ocean because you are weak. There is only one ending for my Smoke Dragon Trade Union, and that is to destroy the player clan. Smoke Dragon said with a ferocious expression. This sentence was undoubtedly poking at the Sea King's wound. However, the Sea King remained calm and laughed instead. President Smoke Dragon, you are right. I, the Sea King, was driven out of the void ocean because I was too weak. Since you have taken action this time, it can be considered as revenge for me. I thank you in advance." The Sea King stood up as he spoke. "President Smoke Dragon, do you have any other information you want to know?" the Sea King continued to ask. Smoke Dragon didn't speak. His face was still gloomy. "Monarch of Mute Monarch, I'll send you off the island," the intelligence officer said to the Sea King. Upon hearing this, the Sea King nodded. After taking another deep look at Smoke Dragon, he turned around and left with the intelligence officer. After the Sea King left, Smoke Dragon clenched his fists with a livid expression. Under the protection of the Acheron Merchant Guild, he had dominated all the major oceans. Even forces that were several times stronger than him treated him with respect. What the players did this time really made him angry. Thinking of this, he suddenly stood up. This time he was going to personally lead the army to attack the player clan's base camp and annihilate the player clan. After a while, countless signal birds flew out of the Black Reef Island and conveyed Smoke Dragon's order to the Smoke Dragon's detachments that were traveling in the two major oceans. Soon, the detachments of Smoke Dragon began to return after receiving the order. Smoke Dragon was also ready to lead the attack himself. On the side of the players, the craze of plundering did not subside at all. During this period of time, the strength of the player clan had once again entered a stage of rapid development. The sea merchants might be an inviolable organization in the eyes of other sea forces, but in the eyes of the players, they were just leaks. Now, all the sea merchants that traveled to the Void Ocean knew about the player clan. In the eyes of the sea merchants, this clan was directly linked to the sea plundering forces. Since they dared to challenge the sea merchants and acted so unscrupulously, countless sea forces seemed to have seen the end of the player clan. Among them, there was only one person who had expectations for the player clan. That person was the Sea King. As the person who hated the players the most and understood them the most, he was ready to watch a good show. What the players did not expect was that when the Smoke Dragon clan finished gathering their forces and was ready to set off for the Void Ocean, someone came to the Lioli coast first. This person was none other than the lord of the Mute Sea Nation, Sha Shui. He brought a message that the Smoke Dragon clan's fleet was coming and asked the players to be prepared. Obviously, Sha Shui came under the Sea King's order. Although the players were surprised, they quickly began to discuss countermeasures on the forum. The players had expected this battle, but they were not afraid of it. Even if they attacked the Lioli coast and took it down, it would not hurt the player clan at all unless the Smoke Dragon Merchant Guild stationed at the Lioli coast forever. However, the players were naturally unwilling to retreat hastily for the upcoming battle. They began to discuss countermeasures on how to make the Smoke Dragon Merchant Guild pay a heavy price in this battle. Chapter 501. After receiving the news that the Smoke Dragon Trade Association was coming, the players started to get busy and prepare for the war. The current player forces were no longer as weak as before, where they could only rely on resurrection to fight to their deaths. With the opening of various life professions, many of the players' shortcomings were made up. With Lin Tai as the leader, the forging team started to work overnight to make the marine war equipment exchanged from the pirate mall. At the same time, Hu He and Nie Fong arrived at the Lioli coast from the European server. As two extremely destructive natural disasters, their appearance also raised the spirits of the players, especially the bomber, who brought along a killer weapon this time. Nie Fong initially resisted the idea of making explosives, but after interacting with Hu He gradually accepted it and became optimistic. Just like what Hu He said, even if you had a terrifying ability like a natural disaster, as long as you used it properly, you would still be respected by others. This should be your strength and pride, not your shadow. Take Hu He, for example. Although the original server's early development period brought about a crushing difficulty for the players, they were not afraid of him. He became an existence that everyone hated. However, now that he came to the European server, the European server avoided several server annihilation crises with his help. He also won the respect of a large number of European server players. This time, after blowing up the demonic formation, Niafeng also received the same treatment. During this period, he also received countless invitations from major guilds and was respected. He also understood who he was trying to say. However, just like he chose to refuse because he stayed in the European server to help he defeat Yuanshu. After that, he planned to follow he back to the original server. After all, his roots were here, and the misunderstanding about blowing up the mansion of the dead had been resolved. He did not need to worry about anything at all. The killer weapon he brought this time was a newly developed new type of elixir, explosive. Thunder Elixir, Level 3 Elixir. Item details: made from the combination of thunder grass, thunder fruit, lifeless water, and other spiritual materials. Dark energy was integrated during the refining process, causing the internal energy to be extremely unstable. Under external force, it will easily explode and cause large-scale lightning damage. Quality: 76 Apothecary. Niafeng Thunder Elixir was a new type of explosive made by Niafeng using spiritual materials from the European server. It was powerful, but most importantly, it had a great controllability. As long as the thunder pill exploded, not only would the enemies within its range receive damage, but they would also be affected by status effects such as numbness. This kind of pill was undoubtedly very effective in large-scale battles. It immediately became a hot item in the auction house. At the same time, Niafeng also began to develop a new type of water bomb for naval battles. They hoped to obtain an underwater bomb similar to a mine to ambush the fleet of the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce. For this reason, he specifically sought out the rock boulder and consulted him. As a master alchemist, the rock boulder immediately provided a few spirit materials for reference. After that, Niafeng devoted himself to research and development. Of course, Niafeng would not concoct pills in the Mansion of the Dead. After all, it would be too scary for the original players. He was afraid that his home would be gone again before the Smoke Dragon fleet arrived. As for the Great Devil King, he now had 28 zombie spirits that were half a step into the Ghost King realm. His overall strength was also the highest among the players. Their arrival filled the players of the European server and the original server with confidence for the upcoming war. In order to deal with the arrival of the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce, even the major guilds of the European server came to the Lioli coast during this period. The safe zone on the sea was full of 3-masted sailboats and Spectre battleships from the European server. During this period, the gluttony that could provide buffs made by the demonic chef life profession players had also become a necessary strategic reserve during this period. In these few days, the players spent a lot of soul coins and converted them into combat power. On Lu Wu's side, he had also harvested a large amount of soul coins as tax and made a lot of money. Pressure was also a motivation for the players, and it was also the key reason why they spent the soul coins that they had previously stored. During this period, while the players were strengthening themselves, they were also enriching Lu Wu. After all, although soul coins were the tangible currency of soul power, to the players they were just currency because they did not have the authority to convert soul coins into experience or soul power. The soul coins that the players stored were of no value to Lu Wu. It was best to let the players spend their soul coins and convert them into their own combat power. After all, his goal was to build the Calamity Army of the players, and the strength of the players was the key to the formation of this army. As time passed, the third day arrived. As far as the eye could see, the Lioli coast was full of steel battleships. Among them, the most eye-catching was the super battleship that the European server players had built with all their efforts. It was as large as an aircraft carrier, and its pitch-black hull shone with a dark luster under the sun. It was like a giant, unsheathed sword lying horizontally on the sea, showing off its sharpness. However, if the strength of the two seas were compared, the strength of the original server was still well-deserved to be number one. This was not only reflected in the number of battleships, but also in the overall combat power. as the second development direction of the original server players. The development of the sea was also highly valued. At this moment, the main battleships of the original server docked at the Lioli coast were generally Spectre battleships that were above level 7, and there were more than 1,000 battleships that were above level 10. These battleships were also the painstaking efforts of the original server players. They carried bricks day and night and spent a lot of energy to fatten these battleships. Just as the players were preparing for war, the fleet of the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association sailed into the Void Ocean. This time, the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association personally led the fleet. There were more than 500 battleships led by the fleet and a total of more than 12,000 people. The strength of this fleet was undoubtedly powerful. It could be said that there was no force in the Void Ocean and the Kuelung Ocean that could compete with it at this stage. This was not to say that the Void Ocean and the Kuelung Ocean were weak. They were the lowest sea in the entire underworld ocean. Just like the law of survival in this world, no force could exist for a long time, and no force could be strong forever. In the past, there were extremely powerful forces in the Void Ocean and the Kuelung Ocean, and there were even super forces that settled in the central ocean of the underworld. However, in the course of history, many super forces either left or were destroyed. At this stage, there were indeed no forces in the Void Ocean and the Kuelung Ocean that could expand outward or even settle in the central ocean of the underworld. There was not even a huge sea force like the Nether Sea Nation that was destroyed that controlled the 3 major oceans. In fact, this was an inevitable process of the development of the sea. Every time a super force left, a new battle for hegemony in the sea would begin. They would become the overlord of the sea and monopolize all the resources. Then, they would rely on these resources to develop rapidly and advance in the direction of a super force in the sea. The result would be either destruction or success. After becoming a super force in the sea, most of them would choose to head to the central ocean of the underworld, which was the strongest, and compete with the demigods and gods for the greatest benefits in the sea. This was a cycle. In this new cycle, the force with the most potential was the one controlled by the Sea King. This was because he managed to rule the Void Ocean and gather all the resources. If the players did not appear, the Sea King's force that obtained all the resources in the Void Ocean would slowly develop and grow stronger as time passed. Perhaps in the future, they would have the opportunity to rush out of the Void Ocean and compete with other forces in the sea. As long as they ruled the sea for a long time and obtained enough resources, the Sea King had the potential to become a super force in the sea. However, not long after he ruled the Void Ocean, he met the players and his future was mercilessly cut off. Although he relied on his own efforts to establish the Mu Tesi nation and obtain the strength of a ghost emperor. However, in reality, he did not have the power to rule the Void Ocean, nor did he have the huge amount of resources to use. Compared to the speed of development, there was still a huge gap. Therefore, at this stage, it was normal that no force in the 2 major oceans could compete with the foreign Smoke Dragon Trade Union. This was because after the destruction of the previous superforce, the Nether Sea Nation, these 2 oceans entered a new cycle of development and hegemony. The Smoke Dragon Trade Union that came at this time undoubtedly had a sense of superiority. After all, there were no forces that were stronger than him in the 2 major oceans. Therefore, to the Smoke Dragon, his words were the rules and no force could disobey them. Under normal circumstances, the forces in the Void Ocean and the Kuelung Ocean would choose to tolerate and cooperate with all the decisions made by the Smoke Dragon. However, it was different this time because there was a very unique force in the Void Ocean. It was the player clan that the Sea King called the Rogue Force. According to the law of survival in the sea, the weak must obey the strong, or else they would be annihilated. However, this rule obviously did not exist for the players. From the moment they started playing the game, the players were becoming more and more stubborn. According to the players, you can kill me, but it's impossible for you to beat me into submission. Disobeying the rules, willful, and scrupulous, and so on, the players were labeled with all kinds of labels that violated the law of survival in this world. This was also the reason why the players were unique. Because he knew the player clan too well, the Sea King was very curious and expectant. He wanted to know if this ridiculously stubborn clan could continue to advance like this. The arrival of the smoke dragon this time was a new round of research on this player force. It was also a chance for the Sea King to understand this force in more detail. At this moment, the huge smoke dragon fleet slowly advanced into the void ocean. In the sky above this fleet, dark clouds rolled, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. The dark clouds that followed the fleet was actually the smoke dragon fleet's way of fighting the enemy. Every smoke dragon warship was equipped with a thundercloud core that was connected to each other. The fleet was arranged in the thunderstorm formation. An entire fleet was a huge formation. This was a special defense formation. When the formation was deployed, all enemies that approached the smoke dragon fleet would be bombarded by the thunderstorm formation. After entering the void ocean, the smoke dragon immediately ordered the fleet to change direction and head toward the Lioli coast. The players' unscrupulous plundering of merchant ships had angered the smoke dragon fleet to the extreme, and he was ready to annihilate the player clan. Therefore, this time he brought all the combat power of the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association. From his point of view, the weak should show the attitude that the weak should have. If they still didn't know what was good for them when they were weak, then they would only be annihilated. Even if the player clan didn't encounter him, they would be annihilated sooner or later. However, since the player clan had provoked him, the Smoke Dragon decided to personally send the player clan into the abyss. Chapter 502. As the Smoke Dragon fleet approached the Lioli coast, the players who went to investigate finally sent back a warning message. At this moment, the voices of the guild leaders rang out in the chat channels of the major guilds, calling for their members to board the ships and prepare for battle. The sails of the battleships were raised, and black flags were also raised at this moment. Although their chances of winning this battle were slim, they could not afford to lose momentum. For this battle, after a discussion between the professional players from the European server and the local server, Yin Xiaoqi would be the one to lead the battle. Players from both the European server and the original server admired Yin Xiaoqi's abilities. Back then, she came up with the idea to help the European server resolve 2 crises and win over the Evil King, allowing him to become an NPC of the European server. In the original server, Yin Xiaoqi's Super Elite Guild battle was equally famous. The players from both the European server and the original server had no objections to Yin Xiaoqi's decision to lead the battle. At this time, Yin Xiaoqi's cold voice rang out in the live chat channel. Everyone, just as I said before, the goal of this battle is to create momentum. Ships can be destroyed, people can be killed, but momentum must not be lost. Do you still remember the battles we fought against the enemy? What can make the enemy tremble in fear is not necessarily absolute strength. It can also be an indomitable spirit, and a spirit that is unafraid of death. Depart. Along with the order, the roar of machinery and spiritual energy inside the battleships sounded. At this moment, the battleships left the Lioli coast and advanced toward the void ocean. There was no fear in the players' hearts for this battle, only excitement and anticipation. They had never experienced a naval battle of this scale. Even during the battle with the Sea King, their final battle was on land and not in the sea. In the void ocean, the Smoke Dragon Trade Association had arrived at the center of the void ocean after half a day's journey. All the forces along the way made way for them. It could be said that they were coming at them aggressively. As they got closer and closer to the Lioli coast, the Smoke Dragon couldn't wait to kill. As a war merchant group, they had not used force for a long time. From Smoke Dragon's point of view, annihilating the player clan this time was also to prove to Wang Su and all the forces in the Kowloon Ocean how powerful the Smoke Dragon Trade Association was. He wanted to let all the forces understand the consequences of provoking them. As they continued to sail, the Smoke Dragon suddenly discovered that countless black dots had appeared on the surface of the sea. An unimaginably huge fleet was heading towards them. At this moment, the soldier standing on the watchtower bellowed to the people below, "President, there's a huge fleet coming from the south. Estimate the specific number." Hearing this, the smoke dragon immediately raised its head and replied. After a moment of silence, the watchman's voice was heard again. This time, his voice was clearly trembling. "President, it's impossible to estimate. At the very least, 30,000, no, 50,000 warships. What?" At this moment, the smoke dragon almost thought he heard it wrong. 50,000! Smoke dragon was dumbfounded. He shouted again, "Can you see clearly which faction it is?" After another moment of silence, the watchman's reply came from above. Guildmaster, it looks like the player clan's fleet. These warships look very similar." Hearing this, the smoke dragon chamber of commerce couldn't help but widen its eyes. The smoke dragon chamber of commerce was a war chamber of commerce, but it only had 10,000 members and 528 battleships. The other side had more than 50,000. Beat your mother. At this moment, the smoke dragon wanted to tear the Sea King, who had provided the information, into pieces. Didn't they say that the player clan wasn't strong and that they were just arrogant? How could 50,000 battleships not be arrogant? If it were him, he might even dare to venture into the central sea of the underworld. At this thought, the smoke dragon instantly panicked. He wanted to annihilate the player clan, but he never thought that the player clan's forces were so terrifying. It could be said that it was completely beyond his imagination. If he really started a war, he would not be annihilating the player clan, but courting death. Thinking of this, he was about to open his mouth to return when the intelligence officer standing on the side said, "President, don't worry. According to the information from the major fleets, the player clan's warships are not real Spectre warships, but fake warships built in the shape of Spectre warships. Although they have the shape of Spectre warships, in reality, they can't compare to the performance of Spectre warships at all. They are far inferior in all aspects. They are completely paper tigers." Really? The information is reliable. Looking up at the dense black dots on the distant sea, the smoke dragon asked in disbelief. Yes, in terms of hardness, these warships may not even be as strong as the finished Spectre warships, let alone Spectre warships. We don't need to be afraid at all, the intelligence officer said again. After knowing the whole story, the smoke dragon was instantly annoyed by his previous timidity. He immediately said, "If that's the case, let's continue forward. It turns out to be a paper tiger. I thought there were more than 50,000 Spectre warships." In fact, what the smoke dragon and the intelligence officer did not know was that the warships of the players were all real Spectre warships. However, the tribute that the Sea King demanded from Cha-Na was placed on the players because of Cha-Na's death. The development of the sea was imminent, but the players did not have enough resources to build Spectre warships and Spectre warships. Therefore, the Spectre warships that Lee designed were growth-type Spectre warships. Although they had the appearance of Spectre warships at first, they needed to consume a large number of spiritual materials to grow slowly. In terms of grade, the Spectre warships in the hands of the players were of a higher grade than the warships in the Smoke Dragon's hands, and the growth potential was even higher. Therefore, during the several battles in the sea, the members of the Smoke Dragon fleet who discovered the strangeness of the Spectre warships in the hands of the players were all paper tigers. They were just special warships built with the same appearance to scare people. The distance between the two sides was getting closer and closer as they sailed. The Smoke Dragon said with a ferocious expression, "Accelerate and ram them." As soon as he gave the order, the signalman on the high platform at the bow waved the signal flag in his hand and gave the orders of accelerate and ram. Instantly, the speed of the Smoke Dragon fleet increased, and the roar of the energy running inside the hull was heard. As time passed, 3 nautical miles, 2 nautical miles, 1 nautical mile, the storm above the Smoke Dragon fleet was raging, and thunder and lightning kept striking the surface of the sea. It was a menacing sight. However, The players were never weak in terms of momentum. When Yin Xiaoqi shouted the words to release the boat spirit, it was as if an ancient seal had been broken at that moment, and the shadows of tens of thousands of beasts suddenly appeared, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. At that moment, the smoke dragon's expression changed again. Is this really not a specter worship? This it's not. The intelligence officer was shocked to see this, but he still gritted his teeth and said, at that moment, they were less than 1 nautical mile away. With the inertia of moving forward, it was too late to turn around. After glaring at the intelligence officer beside him, the smoke dragon took out a golden scroll from his pocket and strode to the bow of the ship. He opened the scroll, and countless golden characters appeared. See God's pardon, see God's howl. As soon as he said that, a string of characters jumped out of the scroll and slowly enlarged in front of the warships. At that moment, the wind suddenly rose. The originally clear sky was now howling, and huge waves were stirred up on the surface of the sea. The players' fleet that was originally moving with the wind was suddenly going against it. What was even more unbelievable to the players was that, in the howling hurricane, water pillars gathered on the surface of the sea and slowly formed water elemental giants. See God's pardon, storm order. The smoke dragon's voice became extremely loud, as if it had merged with heaven and earth, echoing in the sea. In an instant, the dark clouds became lower, and the wind became more violent. A waterspout slowly took shape on the surface of the sea and quickly expanded toward the players' army. Before the players' fleet collided with the smoke dragon fleet, danger had arrived. At that moment, Yin Xiaoqi hurriedly shouted in the live chat channel, all units, activate the protective shield and spread out. After receiving the order, the players' fleet quickly spread out in 2 directions. With the help of the live chat channel, the order was transmitted extremely quickly. As the waterspout approached, the players' fleet was no longer as densely packed as before. At this moment, the rapidly spinning waterspout collided with the front row of the fleet. The water droplets that were thrown out by the waterspout were as sharp as bullets, creating dense holes in the front row of warships. Try to attack the waterspout and see if you can destroy it, Yin Xiaoqi immediately said. After receiving the order, countless ship spirits pounced toward the waterspout and began to tear and bite at it. The waterspout seemed to be enraged and once again swept up a large amount of seawater, which turned into water swords and flung in all directions. A large number of ship spirits were torn apart by this attack, but the waterspout was not affected at all. Seeing this, Yin Xiaoqi's expression darkened, and she immediately ordered the players' fleet to expand the distance between them. Standing beside Yin Xiaoqi, the great empress crossed her arms in front of her chest and said calmly, "This won't do. This waterspout is actually invisible. The seawater is only the elemental power that it has gathered. If we want to destroy it, we still have to use wind power. Only then can we destroy its rotating core." Yin Xiaoqi immediately nodded. "Attention! In the fleet, all 5 elemental warlocks. Activate your wind elemental state and begin to gather power. Listen to my command." As soon as he finished speaking, the warlocks on the warships immediately changed their forms and began to gather wind power. One after another, the players' warships were sunk by the waterspout. Seeing this scene from afar, the smoke dragon couldn't help but laugh. As expected of a paper tiger, can't even withstand a single blow. At this moment, Yin Xiaoqi shouted in the live chat channel, "Release!" Suddenly, a green hurricane formed in front of the players' warships and swept toward the waterspout. Instantly, the rotation inside the waterspout was disrupted and began to distort. The rotation speed was sometimes faster and sometimes slower. The sea level sometimes sank into a deep chasm, and sometimes it gathered into a mountain. Boom! With a loud noise, the waterspout exploded. Countless water droplets rose and fell like a goddess scattering flowers. Seeing that the waterspout was broken, the smoke dragon couldn't help but be surprised. At this moment, the two fleets were less than 100 meters apart. At this moment, Yin Xiaoqi shouted the order to attack. The players' battle cries rang out. One after another, the ship spirits left the hull and pounced toward the smoke dragon fleet like hungry wolves. Instantly, the smoke dragon fleet's thunderstorm formation was also activated. Countless bolts of lightning as thick as bowls struck down, destroying the ship spirits one after another. At this moment, the two fleets at the front also collided. At this moment, the smoke dragon fleet was like a hot soldering iron that was inserted into the sand. It crashed into the other ships one after another, and its speed didn't decrease at all. However, the players weren't worried at all. If one wasn't enough, then they would use two. If two weren't enough, then they would use 80,000 ships. Countless player warships chose to collide with the smoke dragon fleet, trying to stop the advance of the smoke dragon fleet. At this moment, the surrounding water giants formed by seawater also launched an attack on the player fleet. The Battle of the Sea had begun. Chapter 503. It was a battle between 80,000 player battleships and 528 smoke dragon battleships. However, the players were already at an absolute disadvantage at the beginning of the battle. When the smoke dragon battleships charged into the players' fleet, the thunderstorm clouds in the sky bombarded all the approaching player fleets. Amidst the flashes of lightning and thunder, the player battleships were destroyed one after another, sending wood chips flying. The massive water giants in the surroundings also raised their fists and pounced on the player battleships, instantly destroying another dozen battleships. Seeing this, the smoke dragon couldn't help but laugh. He spread out the golden scroll in his hand again and said in a deep voice as the golden characters pulsated, "Poseidon's pardon, Arctic order." As soon as the smoke dragon's voice fell, snow began to fall from the sky, and a thin layer of ice appeared on the surface of the sea and spread rapidly, slowing down the player's fleet. He has the Poseidon's pardon. We must destroy the main ship first, or else the external interference won't stop, the Empress, who was standing beside Yin Xiaoqi, said. Upon hearing this, Yin Xiaoqi said decisively in the live chat channel, "All major guilds, focus your firepower on the smoke dragon battleship." As the order was relayed, the players who were attacking separately began to focus their firepower on the smoke dragon battleship. Poseidon's pardon, water spirit shield. The smoke dragon's loud voice resounded in the sky. Suddenly, several water pillars rose from the sea, forming a circular barrier that enveloped the smoke dragon battleship, blocking the players' attacks. At this moment, Yin Xiaoqi couldn't help but frown. The smoke dragon's various abilities were really troublesome, and it could be said that the players couldn't make full use of their advantage in numbers. Looking at the smoke dragon battleship that was still advancing rapidly, Yin Xiaoqi suddenly had an idea. She immediately said, "All elemental warlocks, transform into water and strengthen the ice layer on the sea." Although the mage players were puzzled, they didn't hesitate and decisively transformed into their forms, throwing ice skills into the sea, and began to strengthen the ice layer that was already frozen. With the support of various ice skills, the ice layer kept thickening, and the smoke dragon battleship that was originally breaking through the ice slowed down. Seeing this, Yin Xiaoqi's lips curled up. Previously, when the smoke dragon froze the sea, it didn't thicken the ice layer, and Yin Xiaoqi was puzzled as to why. Now she understood. Obviously, Smoke Dragon's battleships were far stronger than the player's battleships, so his freezing point was just enough to restrict the player's battleships. However, against their battleships, the thickness of the ice could be easily broken, and they could move forward unimpeded. At this moment, Yin Xiaoqi chose to continue thickening the ice layer. Although this increased the resistance of the player's battleships, it also affected the speed of the Smoke Dragon battleship. Seeing this, Yanlong's expression froze. Now that the speed of their battleships had decreased, it was extremely disadvantageous to them. Right now, his strategy was to lead his fleet into the midst of the players' fleet and use their speed to ram their way through, disrupting the entire formation of the players' fleet. Therefore, speed was very important. Thinking up to this point, he raised Sea God's pardon and immediately deactivated the freezing ability. The fleet sped up again and continued forward. Along the way, metal fragments and wood splinters flew everywhere. In terms of warship strength, the players' warships were at an absolute disadvantage. At that moment, Yin Xiaoqi's voice was heard in the live chat channel. All necromancers in the European server, activate the long-distance summoning as soon as you reach the casting range. The target is the interior of the Smoke Dragon warship. As Yin Xiaoqi's voice trailed off, many black summoning formations appeared on the decks of the Smoke Dragon warships. One by one, skeletal warriors crawled out of them and pounced on the members of the Smoke Dragon warships. Although these skeletal warriors did not have high combat power, they could still play a role in harassment. At the same time, on the European server's Zero Guild warship, the core group of wizards cast their spells at the same time. Suddenly, a huge black formation appeared on the main warship where Yanlong was. An enormous pitch-black skeletal dragon of the undead slowly emerged from the formation. Seeing this, Yanlong stretched out his hand and waved. The space began to distort, tearing apart the formation and crushing the undead dragon on the spot. However, what he did not expect was that the moment the skeletal dragon exploded, a large amount of black fog spread and covered the entire ship in a short time. Sizzling sounds of corrosion could be heard as it began to corrode the defense shield of the main warship. I've checked the analysis. The original hardness of these Smoke Dragon warships is level 14, but I can't see the hardness of the warships after they've been reinforced with a rain shield. I need the specific value. Yin Xiaoqi's voice was heard in the live chat channel. As her voice trailed off, a figure leaped up from the main warship of the European server and turned into a black stream of light, crashing violently. Wrath of the Death Knights. Boom! The ice layer shook, but the blow did not break through the ice layer. As the figure fell, a black rope appeared on the main warship of the European server. It wrapped around his body and pulled him back to the warship. Reinhardt, don't be impulsive. With your individual strength, you can't measure the specific hardness of the Smoke Dragon warship. Li Xing said with a serious expression. When Reinhardt heard that, he nodded with a gloomy expression. After a test just now, he finally knew how strong the defense shield of the main warship where Yanlong was. It was unrealistic for a single person to break the shield. In the distance, the myth warship. After hearing Yin Xiaoqi's words, Gu Yu's expression turned solemn. Right in front of them, a Smoke Dragon warship was heading toward them. Although the level of their myth warship was already very high, he did not have any confidence of winning in a head-on collision with a Smoke Dragon warship that was more than a level higher in quality. However, he did not choose to avoid it because he wanted to test the specific hardness of the Smoke Dragon warship. The way to measure it was to collide with it head-on. Domination body. As his voice fell, a layer of golden light shield suddenly appeared on the surface of the myth warship. The distance between the two sides was very close. In the blink of an eye, the dragon horns collided with each other. Boom! In an instant, the shields of the two warships shattered. This time, the scene of the Smoke Dragon warship crushing the warships of the players did not reappear. In the collision, the Smoke Dragon warship slowly moved backward. Cracks appeared on the dragon horns, and they gradually fell off. As for the myth warship, the entire bow of the ship was dented. A large number of wood shavings and metal fragments flew everywhere. This collision almost destroyed half of the myth warship. A large number of players on the ship were shaken off and fell into the water. The hull of the ship slowly tilted backward and sank into the water bit by bit. At this moment, Gu Yu activated the demonic god form and floated into the air. Beside him, the dog followed closely. Seeing this scene, Guyu's face was filled with joy. This proved that although the smoke dragon worship was strong, the difference in strength was still acceptable and it would still be damaged. Although the myth worship sank, they did not suffer any losses. After all these materials would be recycled. They just had to wait for the cool down to be over before they could be summoned again. However, the damage of the smoke dragon worship was real battle damage. Not only did they not suffer any losses from this collision, but they also made a profit. Most importantly, he knew the hardness value of the smoke dragon worship. Thinking of this, Guyu immediately spoke in the main live chat channel. Attention! The strength of the smoke dragon worship is unknown. The hardness of the rest of the smoke dragon warships with shields is around level 15. Warships that are level 13 and above can collide with them. In this battle, try to damage their warships as much as possible and create an advantage for the next battle. Hearing this, Lu Chai, Yishui, and the others were pleasantly surprised. This was because the warships that they were on were all above level 13. In other words, if they collided with them, they could cause damage to the smoke dragon worship. At this moment, the smoke dragon worship was like a ferocious tiger pouncing on a flock of sheep. They came aggressively and crashed all the way. A large number of damaged hull parts floated behind the warship. However, the players were not a flock of sheep. They were a pack of wolves waiting for an opportunity to move. Even though they were at an absolute disadvantage in this battle, the players did not give up. After countless players fell into the water, they decisively summoned their private specter ships and once again crashed into the smoke dragon warship. Even the smoke dragon warship could not believe the way the players were fighting. To him, this kind of naval battle was simply too crazy. It was completely draining the foundation of a force. In the smoke dragon warship's opinion, even if these warships were not real specter ships, it would still take a lot of time to build them. Such a heartless collision was completely draining the foundation of the players' force. Were they prepared to perish together? Moreover, what made him feel distressed was that the more than 500 smoke dragon warships that he led were more or less damaged under such a crazy attack, except for the main warship that he was on. After all, repairing these warships would cost a lot of spiritual materials. After this battle, he would have to spend a lot of money. The player's mentality was completely different from the smoke dragon warships. Battle damage? No way. Warships were essentially the same as the players. They were both things that could repair themselves. Therefore, the players did not feel distressed at all. They could fight however they wanted. Losses did not matter. Momentum was the focus of this battle. Therefore, while the smoke dragon warship was stunned, the player's collision became even more crazy. There was no need for him to command the warships to take the initiative to crash. The players' warships would swarm over. As for the water giants that the smoke dragon warship summoned, the players did not care at all. They let the water giants do whatever they wanted. Their only target was the smoke dragon warships. The smoke dragon warship had never seen such a fighting style. Under such attacks, the smoke dragon warship voluntarily slowed down, turned around, and increased the distance. In the end, the smoke dragon warship gave up on fighting head-on. If this was a normal naval battle, the enemy's formation would definitely be in chaos under such attacks. The warships would choose to avoid the collision to reduce their losses. However, the players' thought process was completely different from the smoke dragon warships. Instead, they liked this kind of fighting style. If they knew that they could cause damage to the enemy, everything would be worth it. Under such crazy collisions, even the smoke dragon warship could not take it anymore. However, there was no way that the players would let him go. They continued to attack relentlessly and closely. The smoke dragon warship could only use the Neptune's pardon to continuously summon the power of the ocean to snipe the players. Now, the smoke dragon warship only had one idea. It changed from close-range combat to long-range combat. With the Neptune's pardon, it would slowly devour the player's fleet. Meanwhile, Yin Xiaoqi had already seen through the Smoke Dragon Warship's plan. The Smoke Dragon Warship that had crashed into the players' fleet was now surrounded by 5 circles. It was easy to get in, but it was not so easy to get out. Seeing this scene, far in the sky, a figure surrounded by lightning could not help but laugh out loud in the dark clouds. Although this figure was covered in lightning, a black halo floated on his forehead. It was spinning rapidly and blocked the lightning around him, preventing him from being killed. It was a familiar smell and familiar tactics. The Neptune seemed to have become more familiar with the Neptune's pardon. However, this was the player clan that he knew. Looking down, the Sea King was in a very good mood. Chapter 504. At this moment, the Smoke Dragon fleet was completely enraged. A loud voice reverberated in the sea. The golden runes on the sea god's pardon floated into the air, and the sea seemed to be boiling. From time to time, huge waves rose and slammed the players' warships into the water. In the sky, the surging dark clouds kept sending down lightning punishments. The players' warships couldn't withstand these attacks, and many of the players' warships were sunk by the violent power of nature. At this moment, Yin Xiaoqi frowned. Although the players had caused damage to the Smoke Dragon fleet, they hadn't sunk a single warship yet. This wasn't what she wanted to see. It's useless. The sea god's pardon is an advanced, legendary treasure. If we can't destroy it, the external interference won't stop. However, we can't even break the defense of the Smoke Dragon fleet's main warship. We've lost this battle. When Yin Xiaoqi heard this, she rolled her eyes in exasperation. Sister Yu, do you have any good suggestions? Even if we lose, we should at least sink a few warships, right? Otherwise, I won't be willing to lose just like that. Give up on attacking the main warship and focus on attacking the other Smoke Dragon warships. The defenses of those warships aren't as strong as the main warship. Yin Xiaoqi nodded. Then, she looked up at the surging dark clouds above her head and asked again, "Is there a way to disperse these thunderstorm clouds?" This thunderstorm cloud is formed by the formation of the Smoke Dragon battleships below. Every time a Smoke Dragon battleship sinks, the power of the thunderstorm cloud will weaken by a bit. As long as 1/3 of the Smoke Dragon battleship is destroyed, the thunderstorm cloud will dissipate by itself. Upon hearing this, Yin Xiaoqi nodded helplessly. Right now, they couldn't even sink one warship, let alone 1/3 of it. It was completely unrealistic. At this thought, Yin Xiaoqi spoke in the live chat channel. Attention, everyone. Give up on attacking the Smoke Dragon warships and attack the other warships instead. Following Yin Xiaoqi's command, the players changed their attack method again. Although the Smoke Dragon warships suffered some damage, the damage was still too light in the players' eyes. It was as though the players had spent tens of thousands of gold coins only to buy eggs. Although the tens of thousands of gold coins would return to the players, they felt that it wasn't worth it. At this moment, in the center of the battlefield, the Demonic God Club's second-year middle schoolers were staring at a Smoke Dragon battleship that was approaching them from afar. Their expressions were ugly. "Boss, kill it." Fatty looked at Shang and egged him on. "Our warship's hardness is only level 10. The damage caused by the collision is negligible," and Shang could not help but sigh. "Then what should we do? Why don't we try to worship the demonic god and summon him out?" Fatty pointed at the demonic god statue behind him. When Shang heard this, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. When he turned his head to look, he was stunned to find that a few youths in the guild were already worshipping him devoutly. At this moment, Shang could not help but cover his face. He recalled that there was a post on the forum saying that the demonic god society was made up of retarded youths. At that time, he was not convinced, but now he suddenly believed it. The Smoke Dragon warship was getting closer and closer to them. At this moment, Shang gritted his teeth. F*CKU. When they collide, we'll jump into the sea and summon our private Spectre ship to continue fighting. When Fatty heard this, he nodded solemnly. "Those over there, Stop worshipping. Get ready to jump into the sea. And Shung turned his head to look at the guild members who were still worshipping the demonic god and roared. At Shung's roar, the guild members stood up resentfully. At this moment, the smoke dragon worship arrived. Jump! Immediately, the members of the demonic god society jumped into the water one after another. The demonic god worship was smashed into pieces the moment it collided with the smoke dragon worship. Seeing that the demonic god worship was gone just like that, while the smoke dragon worship was unscathed, Fatty, who had fallen into the water, kicked the hull of the smoke dragon worship angrily. Suddenly, a defensive shield appeared, and he was sent flying more than 10 meters away. At this moment, Fatty's temper flared up. He took out a bunch of items from his channel and threw them at the smoke dragon worship. Although he knew that they could not break through the defense, he still wanted to throw them. Among the one-time items, there were items such as the poison, mist potion, and flame potion that he had bought from the shop. There were also some consumables that he had bought from the auction house. One of them was the thunder pill refined by the bomber. The moment these items collided with the smoke dragon worship, flames and electric arcs exploded. The defensive shield of the warship trembled slightly, but it did not break through. Fatty let out a dispirited sigh when he saw this scene. Right at this moment, an unexpected scene occurred. The thunderclouds above the warship suddenly surged. Then a bolt of lightning as thick as a bowl struck the shield of the warship. Kacha! The warship's shield shattered, and the lightning bolt penetrated it, creating a deep hole in the front deck of the warship. The rampaging electric arcs also caused significant damage to the members of the warship. Seeing this, Fatty was dumbfounded. What's going on? He quickly opened the combat interface to check the details. Causing fire damage to the target warship. Causing poison mist corrosion damage to the target warship. Causing lightning damage to the target warship. The effect of the thunder pill will trigger the heavenly thunder, causing secondary damage to the target warship. After knowing the reason, Fatty's eyes widened. Damn, Fatty, how did you do it? At this moment, Shung's roar sounded in the live chat channel. Thunder pill. Quickly use the thunder pill. What do you mean? It's the thunder pill refined by the bomber. Didn't we each buy one last time? Quickly throw it at this smoke dragon warship, or it will sail away. Fatty said quickly. Hearing this, Shung was puzzled, but he still decisively took out a thunder pill from the channel, charged it, and threw it at the warship. Pa! The thunder pill shattered. As the electric arcs lingered, the dark clouds above once again surged toward the smoke dragon warship. Then a thunderbolt gathered and smashed down. This thunderbolt was even more violent than before, and the warship, which was already overwhelmed, immediately fell apart. Game notification. Target smoke dragon warship number 428 has been sunk. 247 targets have been killed. 46 have been seriously injured. Death statistics complete. As the game notification sounded, a large amount of blue and golden mist emerged from the sunken part of the warship and poured into the bodies of Shung and his teammates. In a flash of golden light, they leveled up collectively. At this moment, Shung, Fatty, and the others were dumbfounded. They were aware of the strength of these warships. Their level 10 warships could not even break through the defense shield, let alone cause damage to them. However, at this moment, just 2 thunder pills had sunk a warship. At this moment, there was only one thought in their minds. The Bomberman was really awesome. However, what they did not know was that this time it was not the Bomberman's thunder pill that was effective. Instead, the thunder pill had the effect of attracting thunder, and the formation of the smoke dragon warship happened to be the thunderstorm formation. It could be said that it perfectly matched the thunder attracting effect of the thunder pill. After knowing that the thunder pill could attract thunder, Shung hurriedly shouted in the regional live chat channel, "The thunder pill made by the Bomberman can sink the smoke dragon warship. Who can send this news to the main voice chat? I don't have the authority to speak in the main voice chat. This news immediately attracted the attention of many players, and soon the news was passed to Lu Chai. Lu Chai immediately spoke in the main voice chat channel and conveyed the news that the Thunder Pill could break through the defense of the Smoke Dragon worship to all players. This news was obviously beyond the players' expectations. Although the players knew that the Thunder Pill made by the Bomberman was very powerful, the defense of the Smoke Dragon worship was at least level 15. Therefore, no players tried to break the defense of the Smoke Dragon worship with the Thunder Pill. However, after knowing this news, the players suddenly became excited. Many players who bought the Thunder Pill took out the Thunder Pill from the channel. One by one, the Thunder Pill was thrown toward the Smoke Dragon worship. At this moment, the thunderstorm clouds in the sky were like the angry thunder god. Lightning flashed, and lightning pillars that were as thick as the mouth of a bull struck down. It turned out that the Thunder Pill could indeed break through the defense of the Smoke Dragon worship. The defense shields of the Smoke Dragon warships were shattered one by one, and some warships were even sunk by the lightning pillars. At this moment, the players cheered in the live chat channel. Sinking these Smoke Dragon warships not only gave them soul coins and EXP, but most importantly, the joy of victory. The players were extremely frustrated when they were suppressed. Now, it was finally time for them to fight back. Under the interference of the Thunder Pill, the thunderstorm clouds seemed to be unable to distinguish between friend and foe. While they struck the players' warships, they also struck the Smoke Dragon warships. By the time the Smoke Dragon warships realized this, more than 30 warships had been destroyed. At this moment, the Smoke Dragon warships were furious. These warships were his treasures and also the capital of the Acheron Trade Union. How could he not be distressed when they were destroyed like this? President, the player clan seems to have something that interferes with the thunderstorm clouds. Should we shut down the formation? The intelligence personnel at the side said hurriedly. Looking at the thunderstorm clouds that kept raining down lightning, the Smoke Dragon warship could not help but grit his teeth. Shut it down! Upon hearing this, the intelligence personnel immediately turned around and shouted to the signal personnel on the high platform, "Shut down the formation!" Upon hearing this, the signal personnel on the high platform immediately signaled to shut down the formation. The news quickly spread among the Smoke Dragon warships. The thunder cores inside the Smoke Dragon warships were extinguished, and the dark clouds in the sky stopped churning and began to disperse. As the dark clouds dispersed, the thunder pills in the hands of the players suddenly lost their previous power. They could not even destroy the warship's defense formation. This made the players feel terrible. It felt as though they had been suppressed for a long time and had finally accumulated enough rage to unleash an ultimate skill. However, they did not expect that the ultimate skill would end in a few seconds. It was not satisfying enough. At this moment, the massacre of the Smoke Dragon warships began again. Without the thunderstorm clouds, the efficiency of the Smoke Dragon warships destroying the players' warships was much slower, but the players also lost the capital to fight against the Smoke Dragon warships. At this point in the battle, the players' warships had lost more than 20,000 warships, while the Smoke Dragon warships had lost 32. The gap was huge. As the battle continued, the damage to the players' warships continued to increase, and 2 more Smoke Dragon warships were sunk. Although the results were impressive, the Smoke Dragon warships were not feeling good. At this moment, what he wanted the most was not to destroy the players' fleet, but to escape. The loss of dozens of warships could only be described as a heavy loss for the Smoke Dragon warship. The spiritual materials needed to build a Spectre warship were incomparably huge. Losing 34 warships in one go really pained the Smoke Dragon warships. In comparison, the players were very happy. They had thought that they would return empty-handed from this battle, but they did not expect to sink dozens of warships. They had made a killing. As for escaping, it was impossible. Fight until the last person, then continue in a few days. If we don't destroy the players, what kind of evil force are we? Chapter 505. The battle lasted for 5 hours before it finally came to an end. Almost all the player warships were sunk, but Smoke Dragon was going crazy because he had lost 41 Smoke Dragon warships in this battle. He could not gather enough spiritual materials to build one Smoke Dragon warship in a year. The loss was so great that Smoke Dragon's body was trembling slightly. He took a deep breath and looked forward. There were less than 5,000 player warships left. Under the attack of the water giants, the damage of the player warships continued to increase. Attack! Attack! Smoke Dragon roared angrily. Smoke Dragon's fleet immediately spread out and attacked the remaining player warships. On the other hand, the players were very calm. In short, it was good that they made a profit. Perhaps to Smoke Dragon, the players' forces were already destroyed. After all, the loss was too great. But the players knew that this was just the beginning. There was still time. In the end, more than 5,000 player warships sank under the attack of the Smoke Dragon warships. Until the end, none of them escaped. When the battle ended, Smoke Dragon's expression was extremely ugly. He looked at the wrecked warships floating on the sea and immediately ordered, "Salvage the wrecks and see how much usable material there is." At this moment, he only wanted to make up for his losses. Soon, an intelligence officer hurried over. "Guild leader, the wrecks of the player clan's warships have all disappeared." "What did you say?" Smoke Dragon was in disbelief, thinking that he had heard wrong. "The wrecks of the player warships have all disappeared into thin air." The intelligence officer could not help but repeat, All disappeared." At this moment, Smoke Dragon's eyes widened. "You're telling me that the wrecks of more than 80,000 warships have all disappeared?" "Yes." The intelligence officer's face showed an awkward expression. Smoke Dragon immediately walked to the bow of the warship and looked toward the sea. The deep sea was filled with white waves, but the wrecks of the warships that floated on the surface of the sea had really disappeared. At this moment, Smoke Dragon's expression could only be described as dumbstruck. Meanwhile, the Sea King, who was hiding in the clouds and peeking below, was rolling on the floor with laughter. "Where did they go?" Smoke Dragon mumbled. "Guild leader, I think the player warships might be built with special materials that will dissolve in water after they're disassembled." The intelligence officer, who could not provide any useful information, could only give such a far-fetched explanation. "Melt your mother's head." The angry Smoke Dragon grabbed the intelligence officer's neck and threw him into the sea. "Find it for me. If you don't find it, don't come back." Looking at the empty sea, the intelligence personnel wanted to cry, but had no tears. Where the hell were they supposed to find this? Watching the fleet of warships slowly leave, the intelligence personnel tried to dive into the water to search. However, the water was still empty and only a few fish occasionally swam by. Although the player clan was annihilated in this battle, the Smoke Dragon was not happy at all. Instead, he was extremely annoyed. It could be said that this battle had caused Yan Long's mentality to completely explode. On the way back, the Smoke Dragon was still feeling extremely irritated after traveling for several hours. Although he was in the Underworld Merchant Guild and was a member of the War Merchant Group, this position required a corresponding level of strength to sit in. Who knew how many people were eyeing the power of the War Merchant Group? For him, this loss was equivalent to losing nearly 50 years of profit. Just as the Smoke Dragon was feeling annoyed, a figure leisurely floated past the bow of the warship. This person was chubby and carried a turtle shell on his back. He had a harmless look on his face. Although he was flying, his eyes were closed and his body was drooping as if he was sleeping. F***CK off. Yen Long, who was in a bad mood, immediately took action and fiercely slapped. Accompanied by the appearance of a blue stream of light, it quickly swept toward the person. Slap. At this time, the warship's protective shield suddenly popped up. The slap hit the protective shield and suddenly rebounded, hitting the smoke dragon's body and sending him flying backward, crashing into the mast. F*CK, who the F*CK activated the protective shield. Are you a F*King Pig? The smoke dragon stood up angrily and roared. The people on the warship, standing on the high platform, looked at each other, but no one answered. The smoke dragon glared at them fiercely, then looked at Dr. Hai again. His expression gradually became ferocious. Right now, he needed a target to vent his emotions. Thinking of this, the smoke dragon floated into the air and reached out to grab Dr. Hai. At this time, the warship's protective shield suddenly appeared again, and the smoke dragon who hit the protective shield was bounced back again. F*CK, your mother, who the F*CK activated at this time. The smoke dragon was so angry that he wanted to kill someone. Chairman, no one activated it. It automatically popped up. A member of the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce, standing on the high platform, replied in a low voice, "You." The smoke dragon took a deep breath and calmed his emotions. He planned to capture Dr. Hai first, and then pursue this matter. This time, the smoke dragon floated into the air carefully, fearing that the warship's protective shield would automatically pop up. Fortunately, the protective shield did not appear this time. This made the smoke dragon heave a sigh of relief. Then he once again grabbed Dr. Hai with a ferocious expression. However, just as he was about to grab the Zhonghai doctor, a ray of light swept over him and sent him flying. Which bastard activated the gilded cannon? The disheveled smoke dragon shouted angrily in the direction of the warship. The people on the warship below trembled and did not dare to answer. This was because no one was operating the warship now. Chairman, I think it's a misfire. At this time, one of them mustered up the courage to shout at the smoke dragon, "I'm leaving my ass. I'll deal with you guys later." The red-eyed smoke dragon did not believe it and turned his hand again to grab Dr. Hai. Just as he was about to grab Dr. Hai, he suddenly stopped and turned to look at the direction of the warship. Fortunately, there was no misfire this time. However, his eyes widened very quickly because all the other warships behind him had misfired. Beams of gilded fire cannonballs shot toward him like a crimson meteor shower. F*CK. The smoke dragon wanted to kill someone. At this moment, he even suspected that the members of the guild were plotting a rebellion behind his back and were preparing to assassinate him to take over. A mass misfire? This is too F*King fake. Thinking of this, the smoke dragon quickly turned his body and began to dodge the attack of the gilded cannon. Boom! 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 Countless gilded fire cannonballs fell and flames splattered everywhere. Although he dodged all of them, the smoke dragon was still covered in dust. At this time, he turned to look at Dr. Hai. However, he was shocked to find out that Dr. Hai was still sleeping with his eyes closed under the intense bombardment of the cannonballs. It was as though none of the cannonballs had hit Dr. Hai, and the aftershock did not hurt him at all. This is too lucky. The smoke dragon could not believe it. He turned to look at the members of the warship. Those members instinctively took a step back with innocent expressions on their faces, although they wanted to explain that it was really a mass misfire this time. Even they themselves felt that it was too F*King fake and that it was too F*King premeditated murder. After glaring at his subordinates fiercely, the smoke dragon turned to look at Dr. Hai again. This time, he did not choose to attack at close range. Instead, he waved his hand and created a distorted space. He did not believe that he could not kill this person. The distorted space slowly moved toward Dr. Hai under the control of the smoke dragon. A cruel smile appeared on the smoke dragon's face. He could almost see the scene of the distorted space tearing Dr. Hai apart. However, just as the distorted space was about to come into contact with Dr. Hai, the surface of the sea suddenly surged and a huge wave rose. Under the smoke dragon's astonished expression, a huge tail that was hundreds of meters long emerged from the water and swept him fiercely, sending him flying. Ah! A huge head emerged from the water. After letting out a roar, it spat out a string of bubbles and slowly sank into the water. The smoke dragon was seriously injured by this attack and flew far away. Finally, he fell into the water and slowly sank. "It's so noisy. Can't you let me sleep?" At this time, Dr. Hai woke up and rubbed his sleepy eyes. He looked at the members of the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce who were standing on the warship's high platform not far away and looked at the surface of the sea. After a while, he closed his eyes again and fell into a deep sleep. Chapter 506. Recently, two pieces of news from the Empty Sea region and the Kowloon Sea region had stirred up heated discussions among the various forces in the sea region. The first news came from Black Reef Island. The player clan was completely wiped out under the attack of the Smoke Dragon fleet. This news caused a huge uproar in these two seas. Many of the sea region factions were no longer as unfamiliar with the player clan as they were in the past. As their interactions with the player clan deepened, many of the sea region factions even felt that the player clan was a strong competitor for the future overlord of the sea region. He had incomparably great potential. Being destroyed in such a manner was beyond the expectations of many sea region forces. At that moment, the reputation of the Smoke Dragon Chamber of Commerce resounded throughout the two seas. This made the various forces who were already afraid of them realize how powerful the Smoke Dragon fleet was. But soon, another piece of news came out. The Smoke Dragon was severely injured and on the verge of death. No one knew where this news had come from, but the authenticity of it caused a heated discussion among the various sea region powers. In the beginning, many forces in the sea region were skeptical. After all, the Smoke Dragon was a powerhouse in the Ghost Emperor realm. How could he be seriously injured or even on the verge of death after a battle with the player clan? This could be seen from the damage suffered by the Smoke Dragon warship in this battle. If more than half of the Smoke Dragon warship had been destroyed after the battle, then the various forces could understand that the battle had been extremely intense. It was also understandable that the Smoke Dragon warship had been heavily injured. However, the Smoke Dragon fleet had only lost over 40 warships in this battle. It could be said to be a completely one-sided battle. How could the Smoke Dragon fleet be injured? The forces of the various seas only treated this as a rumor, and there were only a few who believed it. But a few days later, when it was time for the second gathering of the forces in the sea region, the Black Reef Island announced that the meeting would be postponed. The specific date was unknown. This announcement instantly made the various oceanic forces recall the rumors of Smoke Dragon being injured. In the past few days, not only did the Smoke Dragon not show up, but even the fleet that he led didn't go to the sea to investigate the sea plunder incident. Everything was very strange. Under such circumstances, many forces began to believe that Smoke Dragon was seriously injured and on the verge of death. Even if all the merchant associations on Black Reef Island tried to refute the rumor, no one would believe it without the appearance of the Smoke Dragon. Instead, they would suspect that the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association was trying to cover it up. As the saying goes, if you are not sick, you should take 2 steps. The appearance of the real person is more reliable than any other method of refuting rumors. Continuously refuting the rumors without any substantial response would only make people more suspicious. At this moment, the Smoke Dragon Trade Association was in great trouble. At this moment, inside Black Reef Island, Vice President Smoke Wolf stood outside the spirit cave where Smoke Dragon was recuperating, his face gloomy as he paced back and forth. At this moment, a merchant with a head full of white hair walked quickly from the side. Vice Guild Leader Smoke Wolf. What's the situation with Guild Leader Smoke Dragon? Everyone is talking about the Guild Leader being heavily injured. The situation is very bad for us. Guild Leader Black Reef, who leaked this information? Smoke Wolf asked the white-haired old man as he stood behind the white-haired old man. When the white-haired old man heard that, he shook his head. I don't know. After the fleet returned, this news appeared out of thin air on the various trading islands, and then spread to the two seas. Clearly, it was secretly done by some force. Damn it! Yen Lang couldn't help but clench his fists. Not only did the fleet suffer huge losses in the battle with the player clan, but they also didn't expect the Smoke Dragon to be seriously injured by Tao Wu on the way back. If the crew hadn't rescued it in time and used a large amount of healing spiritual materials to stabilize its injuries, then brought it back to Black Reef Island for treatment, the Smoke Dragon might have been dead. Smoke Wolf, who was stationed on Black Reef Island at that time, couldn't help but be stunned when he heard the news. The first thing he did was to block the news of the Smoke Dragon's injury. Otherwise, the Smoke Dragon fleet would be in danger. Although the Smoke Dragon fleet was now the War Chamber of Commerce, no force dared to attack them. But the name of the War Chamber of Commerce was coveted by many forces. If the news of the fleet being damaged and the Smoke Dragon dying spread, the most direct impact would be that many forces would fight for the War Chamber of Commerce title of the Smoke Dragon fleet. Moreover, if this news spread to the upper echelons of the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce, they would also reconsider the Smoke Dragon fleet to see if they still had the qualifications to be the War Chamber of Commerce. Smoke Wolf didn't even dare to think of such consequences if they lost the title of the War Chamber of Commerce, not to mention the huge annual loss of profits. Just the chambers of commerce and sea forces they offended would be enough to kill them. Therefore, Smoke Wolf chose to block the news without hesitation. But he didn't expect that the news would still leak out and spread to the two seas in such a short time. Perhaps it wouldn't take long for the upper echelons of the Netherworld Chamber of Commerce to be spread by the chambers of commerce they offended. At this moment, Smoke Wolf and his subordinates were as anxious as ants on a hot pan. Not only did their attempts to refute the rumors not work, but it also led to worse consequences. Now that the Smoke Dragon was still unconscious, the morale of the entire fleet was low, and the situation was not optimistic. Not only did the battle with the player clan not bring them the joy of victory, but the specific losses could no longer be described as huge. At this moment, Smoke Wolf only hoped that his brother, Smoke Dragon, would recover from his injuries quickly so that he could personally refute the rumors and suppress the worsening situation. But what they didn't expect was yet to come, because all the members of their enemy, the player clan, had been resurrected at the Mansion of the Dead in full health. After this battle, the player clan also saw the many shortcomings on their side. Then, the direction of the discussion on the forum changed because the players realized how much of a disadvantage they had in a head-on battle with the Smoke Dragon fleet. As long as Smoke Dragon was around, the Neptune's pardon in his hands was simply a divine weapon of naval warfare, and the players had no power to resist at all. This time, they mainly relied on the thunder pellet to attract the lightning and blow up dozens of Smoke Dragon warships. Otherwise, the outcome could only be described as tragic, and it would be a complete formality. After this, the players didn't even need to think to know that Smoke Dragon would definitely not activate the thunderstorm cloud matrix when fighting them in the future. Therefore, a new strategy was very important. However, the players' mentality was still very good. After all, they were players. Their enemies came wave after wave, but they still stood firm. Just as the players were discussing how to continue to sanction the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association, a player made a suggestion. This suggestion had a unique thought circuit, and it caused a heated discussion among the players. When I was researching forging skills recently, I thought of an advanced ability in forging, disassembly, and decomposition. I think this ability will definitely be useful in this battle. Author, Lin Tai Content. Let me first introduce myself. I am a lifestyle player in the Mansion of the Dead, and my sub-profession is a forging master. 3 days ago, the leader of the Dark Bloodlines Guild asked me to forge a batch of naval warfare tools. At that time, I accepted this task, and then started to forge the tools according to the blueprint. However, during the forging process, due to a mistake, during the casting process, many parts that were supposed to be assembled were smelted together. I really want to kill my stupid son. As a result, all the parts were scrapped. Since the spiritual iron and spiritual materials were all provided by the Dark Bloodlines Guild, the loss was undoubtedly very huge. At that time, I wanted to salvage the situation and see if I could disassemble these smelted parts. For this reason, I specifically looked for Master Tong Gua and consulted him. Then, Master Tong Gua told me about an advanced ability for forging masters, disassembly and decomposition. In order to recover the loss, I stayed in the Mansion of the Dead library for a few days to read up on the specific principles and operating methods of disassembly and decomposition. After that, I tried repeatedly, during which several assembled parts were scrapped. However, I finally succeeded. I really disassembled all the melted parts of the machine. Therefore, I suddenly thought, since the smoke dragon worship is so hard that we can't do anything about it, can we sneak in and disassemble the parts of their worship? The most important thing is that we can use the parts that we dismantled. Although the success rate is very low and it requires excellent skills, there are so many of us players. It shouldn't be a problem to disassemble one worship a day, right? This is my suggestion. Perhaps everyone can give it a try. Another thing to mention, the technique of disassembly and decomposition is not easy to master, and the success rate is not high. However, don't be afraid of a target without practice. The smoke dragon worship is waiting for you. Forum, _large_wolf dog, dumbfounded dog. You can do that? Now that you mention it, I can almost see the disassembly team on the way. Captain of the Demolition Officers. I heard that you guys are calling for our demolition club. Do you want to join us? Tong Gua's arrogant face, JPG, Shuli _the strongest. What the F *CK, Uncle Lin Tai is awesome. Disassembly tactics? If we don't fight head-on, we'll disassemble all their warships? C King's shocked face. JPG, Assassin _Creed, 666. After reading Uncle Lin Tai's post, I can almost see the members of the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association doubting their lives after waking up from a nap. Exciting, laughing emoji. Dogball _Taba, this is too cruel, but I like it. Chana's grin emoji. Lin Tai's suggestion could be said to be ingenious. All the players were thinking about how to rely on tactics or improve their strength to defeat the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association head-on. Lin Tai's suggestion caught many of the players off guard. It was unexpected. However, when they thought about it carefully, they realized that it did make sense. Moreover, the profession of blacksmith was the only profession in the entire server that had no limit and was open to all players. In other words, every player could actually give it a try. In an instant, the Mansion of the Dead's library was flooded with people. The players enthusiastically participated and began to study the branch of blacksmith's ability, disassembly, and decomposition. Even Lu Wu, who was behind the scenes, did not expect the players' actions. According to Bailey, the players' idea was totally feasible. Although the success rate was very low, even a specter worship like the Smoke Dragon worship could not handle the number of players. There would always be a few successful cases among the attempts. As long as they were successful, the Smoke Dragon Merchant Association would suffer a huge loss. The players' current attempt had once again confirmed Lu Wu's original idea. The players' potential was limitless. They could always find a way to defeat their enemies. Just like the Mahogany House building battle during the invasion of the evil spirits, this time the players' battle tactics were on the scene again. Due to the huge number of players entering the library during this period, Lu Wu had decisively expanded the area of the folded space in the library so that the players would not be unable to study. Soon, the strategy to learn disassembly and decomposition was posted on the forum by Lin Tai, who was one step ahead. The learning craze spread again. Although it was painful to learn, every Battle Royale player had a sense of superiority. After all, no other game could be as hardcore as Battle Royale. As for learning, the players had also changed from being surprised at the beginning to getting used to it. This was also what Luwu wanted to see. His Calamity army was growing.